Chapter 39-47. The difference in strength between him and Lin Yi was so huge that he couldn't see the end of it. It would be wishful thinking if he wanted to break free from Lin Yi's grasp. The only way was to chop off his left hand as mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, not only was Kang Mingming afraid of death, but he was also afraid of pain. He wouldn't be able to do such a manly thing even if he had the guts to do so. Kang Mingming couldn't break free no matter how hard he tried, and he didn't dare to cut off his own arm. Playing a little trick was completely useless. Seeing the Dan fire bomb in his hand getting more and more violent, Kang Mingming's heart was in his throat. No longer caring about his face, Kang Mingming shouted, "I've lost. I surrender. I'll give up, okay?" He wasn't just shouting at Lin Yi. Judging from Lin Yi's attitude, Kang Mingming knew that even if he surrendered, Lin Yi might not give him the chance. Therefore, he was shouting at the crowd, especially the pavilion master of Welcoming Pavilion, Hu Yunfeng. As soon as he said that, the crowd was in an uproar. Kang Mingming had purposely lowered his voice when he begged for mercy, so they couldn't hear it clearly. However, now that he shouted it in front of everyone, it was hard for them not to hear it clearly. Did I hear it wrong? Kang Mingming surrendered? The crowd looked at each other with a strange expression. They had expected that Kang Mingming was no match for Lin Yi. However, he was a newcomer that Su Lingchong and Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng supported. Even if he didn't care about his own face, he should at least care about the faces of the people above him. Being forced by Lin Yi to surrender and beg for mercy in front of everyone was too embarrassing. The truth was that Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng, who always paid attention to his image, had his face as black as the bottom of a pot. Wasn't Kang Mingming's words a slap to his face in front of everyone? Fortunately, Su Lingchong was not present. This young master had been busy competing with the South Heaven Gate for the position of the first senior brother supervisor of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Recently, it had reached a crucial moment. That was why he didn't come over. Otherwise, if he was here and Kang Mingming dared to embarrass him like this, he would definitely be killed. Kang Mingming was not a fool. If young Master Su was here, he would probably have a different kind of righteous expression. But now, no matter how unhappy Hu Yunfeng was, as long as he shouted this in front of everyone, then Hu Yunfeng must come forward to protect him. Otherwise, it would be a serious dereliction of duty. As expected. Although Hu Yunfeng's face was dark, after hearing Kang Mingming's plea, he still appeared on the arena in a flash and said in a clear voice, "In that case, this duel ends here. Lin Yi, you can let go now." After saying this, Hu Yunfeng's eyes stared deadly at Lin Yi. If Lin Yi made any strange movements that did not conform to the rules, he could take the opportunity to attack him. He wanted to vent the anger in his heart. However, Lin Yi only paused for a moment before he cooperated and let go. He said calmly, "Since Pavilion Master Hu has said so, then I will be merciful and let you go. In that case, I'll be merciful and let you go. However, whether you can survive or not will depend on your own luck." After saying this, before the crowd could react, Lin Yi's figure suddenly retreated. At the same time, Hu Yunfeng's expression also changed. Without saying a word, he dashed off the arena. At this moment, there was only Kang Mingming left on the arena. At first, he thought that his plan had worked and he felt quite lucky. However, he soon realized that the pill fire bomb in his hand was on the verge of exploding. After coming to his senses, Kang Mingming immediately swung his hand in horror, desperately trying to throw the pill fire bomb out. Unfortunately, before he could completely let go, the pill fire bomb had already exploded. Boom! The ground shook violently, and the expressions of the people below the arena changed dramatically. When the dust settled, the arena was astonishingly destroyed by more than half. The protection circle of the Welcoming Pavilion wasn't that high-leveled, but Lin Yi seemed to be the only one who'd been able to do something like this. Who would have thought that Kang Xiaoming, that spineless coward, would be such a tough character? With such power, it could only be defeated by a freak like Lin Yi. Otherwise, if it had been any other newcomer present, they would have died without any possibility of survival. This guy, Kang Ming, really had some skills. What they did not know was that this time, in order to kill Lin Yi, Kang Ming deliberately held back the pill fire bomb for a long time. The power had reached the limit of what he could do. That was why even he himself could not control it. This time, the pill fire bomb that he deliberately held back not only did not blow up Lin Yi, but also caused him to fall into it. Originally, thanks to the intervention of Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng, although this time Kang Ming was extremely thrilling, he still had the opportunity to throw out the pill fire bomb in time and escape unscathed. Unfortunately, Lin Yi did not give him this opportunity at all. At the moment when he let go, he secretly inserted a stream of true qi into it. If he could still hold on until the pill fire bomb was thrown out, then he would really be a living ghost. With great difficulty, he escaped a disaster. In the end, he did not expect that in the end, he was still played by Lin Yi. This time, Kang Ming was really bloody unlucky. Like everyone else, Lin Yi stared at the situation on the arena. Now he also wanted to know one thing, whether Kang Ming was dead or alive. Although with the comparison of their current strength, it was difficult for Kang Ming to pose a real threat to him. But in view of all the past grievances, Lin Yi did not mind taking this opportunity to kill Kang Ming. After a while, a sharp-eyed person in the audience discovered Kang Xiaoming in the ruins of the arena. His body was riddled with wounds. His skin and flesh were all red with patches of charred black. It was a sight that made one's hair stand on end. Hu Yunfeng's eyelids twitched. No matter how much Kang Ming embarrassed him, he was, after all, a person who Su Lingchong had ordered to take good care of. If he let him die here, it would be difficult to explain to Su Lingchong later. With a flash, Hu Yunfeng appeared next to Kang Ming. He carefully measured his breath and found that it was more exhaling than inhaling. It seemed that he was about to die. But fortunately, he still had one last breath. Hu Yunfeng hesitated for a moment, then fiercely gritted his teeth. He took out a 4th-grade Great Recover pill from his bosom and fed it to Kang Ming. Although the 4th-grade Great Recover pill was precious, if he could exchange it for Kang Ming's life, not only would he be saving Kang Ming's life, but the key was that at the same time, he could also make Su Lingchong owe him a favor. It was quite worthwhile. Chapter 39-48. Even though Kang Ming was not far from death, as long as he had the 4th-grade Great Revitalizing pill to save his life, it was basically impossible for him to die. However, Lin Yi didn't have too many regrets. As far as he was concerned, if Kang Xiaoming died just like that, it would be great. But even if Kang Xiaoming didn't die, it wasn't a bad thing. He had previously diverted the Southern Sky Gate and Yusha's attention to Kang Ming. He did not expect to deceive these people, but at least he could act as a smokescreen for a while. If he killed Kang Ming this time, not only would Su Lingchong and the others seek revenge, it would also attract the attention of the Southern Sky Gate and Yusha, who had been lying low for some reason. At that time, if Meng Jueguang were to appear in front of them again, Lin Yi's situation would not be far from collapsing. Therefore, in Lin Yi's eyes, Kang Ming's lucky survival was still of some use. As long as he continued to struggle at death's door, he could continue to confuse the Southern Sky Gate and Yusha, so that they would not be driven to desperate measures for the Star Ink Stone. As long as he could temporarily stabilize these people, before Meng Jueguang came into contact with them, Lin Yi still had a chance to resolve the hidden danger. Although he was not confident, he still had to try. After all, compared to the Southern Sky Gate and Yusha, or even the stronger Southern Tyrant, Meng Jueguang was only a small problem. Lin Yi did not have the strength to face Southern Tyrant at the moment, but if he only needed to get rid of Meng Jueguang, he still had a chance, provided that he found a good opportunity. It didn't matter if Kang Xiaoming was dead or alive, there were pros and cons to it. That was the reason why Lin Yi's performance was so unpredictable. Otherwise, if he really made up his mind to kill Kang Ming, with Kang Ming's insignificant cultivation, he would have died long ago even if he had 10 lives. How could he have had the chance to linger until now? If he had used a true chi bomb to fight with him, Kang Ming would have died very quickly. However, in that case, Lin Yi would be exposed. After all, the 4th grade Great Recover pill was a healing medicine that could save a life. Kang Ming was in such a miserable state because of his Dan fire bomb, but he still managed to hang on to his last breath. Not only did his breathing gradually stabilize, but he also quickly regained consciousness. However, before he could rejoice that he had escaped with his life, Lin Yi's next words almost made him faint. Lin Yi cleared his throat and spoke to the crowd in a loud voice. According to the rules, the number 1 cave on top of the mountain now belongs to me. However, I have no interest in this cave. If anyone here wants it, just tell me. As long as the conditions are right, it won't be a problem for me to give it to anyone. As soon as he said that, the crowd was in an uproar. They thought that today was just a cross-pavilion challenge. No matter what, they had to rely on their own strength to fight for it. They didn't expect that there would be such benefits. The number 1 cave on top of the mountain. There was no doubt that this was the best cave that a newcomer could get. There was still more than half a year before the 1-year period for newcomers. Putting aside the risk of being isolated and targeted. For all the newcomers present, this was still very tempting. Especially those newcomers who had not yet succeeded in building their foundation. In the end, they might only be one step away. If they could exchange for the number 1 cave on top of the mountain by paying some price, even if the price was not small, in their opinion, it was still very worthwhile. Of course, even if the newcomers of Mysterious Pavilion and Blue Cloud Pavilion had such thoughts, it was difficult for them to meet Lin Yi's requirements. Moreover, there was the risk of being targeted collectively. However, the newcomers of Soaring Sky Pavilion did not have such concerns. After listening to Lin Yi's words, their eyes lit up. Among them, there were many people who did not buy Kang Ming's words. It was only because of Su Lingchong that they did not dare to openly oppose him. Even if there was an occasional bold one, they would follow Shi Yuda's footsteps and be tricked by Kang Ming. However, right now, their opportunity had come. As long as they occupied the number 1 cave on top of the mountain, in a sense, it was equivalent to replacing Kang Ming. Moreover, they did not need to offend Su Lingchong. They just needed to pay a small price and exchange it with Lin Yi, an unrelated outsider. At that time, even if Su Lingchong wanted to blame someone, there was no reason for him to blame them. For a moment, all the newcomers of Soaring Sky Pavilion were eager to give it a try. They had completely forgotten about the Interpavilion challenge. When Kang Ming saw this situation, his eyes rolled back and he fainted on the spot. Relying on the care of Su Lingchong and Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng, it took him a long time to establish a certain status in front of the newcomers of Soaring Sky Pavilion. In the end, with a simple sentence from Lin Yi, all his efforts were wasted. It would be strange if he did not faint from anger. Hu Yunfeng could not help but frown. He was quite dissatisfied with Lin Yi's way of doing things. Although the welcoming pavilion did allow newcomers to exchange cave residences, it was still a private matter. Lin Yi was so brazen. Where was his dignity as a pavilion master? Lin Yi, wait a minute. This interpavilion challenge is indeed your win, but our welcoming pavilion has always been particular about benevolence. Even if you want to occupy the number 1 cave on top of the mountain, you have to at least wait until Deacon Kang recovers. Hu Yunfeng pretended to be benevolent. Wait until he recovers? If he can't recover for the rest of his life, wouldn't this interpavilion challenge be a joke? Pavilion Master Hu, don't you think that's inappropriate? Lin Yi replied with a sneer. Everyone present was also discussing. Hu Yunfeng's favoritism was indeed too obvious. What's more, many people were waiting to exchange cave residences with Lin Yi. This involved their personal interests, so they were naturally dissatisfied. Hu Yunfeng saw that the situation was a little bad. He would not do such a stupid thing to provoke public anger for Kang Ming. He could only soften his attitude and take a step back. In any case, with Deacon Kang's current condition, it would be too disappointing to let him move out directly. How about this? Give him 10 days. After 10 days, I will let you deal with the number 1 cave on top of the mountain. How about it? Okay, this is what Pavilion Master Hu said. Lin Yi smiled faintly. For him, the number 1 cave on top of the mountain was not attractive at all. Being able to use it as bait to pit Kong Ming Ming against the other newcomers of Soaring Sky Pavilion was already a good deal. As for the 10 days, it did not matter much. Chapter 39-49. In the end, the inter-pavilion battle ended hastily. Such an outcome was unexpected, but it was reasonable. After all, not everyone had the heaven-defying strength of Lin Yi, who could easily crush the second and third generation of the Soaring Sky Pavilion without any effort. After that, Lin Yi's actions and Kong Ming Ming's tragic end, especially the future ownership of the cave abode at the top of the mountain, inevitably became the focus of discussion among the newcomers. Lin Yi did not care about it. He continued to cultivate as usual every day, but in private, he gave Li Jingming an order to find a way to monitor Meng Jueguang's recent actions. Because of their identities, Lin Yi basically had no possibility of fighting Meng Jueguang openly. To nip the thread in the bud, the only way left for him was to take the risk and assassinate Meng Jueguang. The risk of this was obvious. He had to find the perfect opportunity to take action, and he had to hit the target in one strike. If any accident happened, it was very likely to lead to disaster. After all, this was different from the last time he dealt with Nan Tianyong. Last time, he was Lin Er, a rogue cultivator whose background no one could find out. But this time, it was Meng Jueguang. If the law enforcement hall was involved, it was almost certain that he would be found out. Once he was suspected, it would be a piece of cake for the law enforcement hall to find out what was going to happen to him. One could only imagine what would happen to him. Therefore, Lin Yi had to keep his cool. Knowing that time was not in his favor, he had to take out the patience of an assassin and wait for an opportunity. However, to his disappointment, after the inter-pavilion battle, Li Jingming tried his best to monitor Meng Jueguang for 5 days, but he could not find any opportunity to take action. Basically, Meng Jueguang was not alone outside, and when he was alone, it was often in his own welcoming pavilion territory. None of them were good opportunities. Just when Lin Yi thought that he would have to continue waiting for such a long time and prepare for a protracted battle, a note suddenly appeared at the door of his cave residence. Lin Er, see you at noon today at the 10th mining area. Although there was no signature, the person who wrote this note was undoubtedly Meng Jueguang. Are you finally ready to lay your cards on the table? Lin Yi rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Even if the other party didn't say what the consequences would be if he didn't go, even if he used his toes to think, he could imagine what awaited him when the time came. His identity would definitely be exposed, and he would die a tragic death. After thinking about it carefully for a moment, Lin Yi finally decided to go. This was a choice he had no other choice. After all, the initiative was still in the hands of the other party, and he had no choice but to be led by the nose. Moreover, if he made good use of this opportunity, it might be a rare opportunity. How could Lin Yi miss it so easily? After tidying up his mind and adjusting his state of mind, Lin Yi immediately walked towards Jade's Spirit Hall after making his decision. Although there was still a lot of time before noon, it was not a bad thing to arrive early for this kind of thing. Coming to Jade's Spirit Hall, Lin Yi walked towards the 10th mining area with familiarity. It had been a while since he came here. Although the 3-month period for the first batch of newcomers to sign contracts had passed, this did not mean that they could not come to Jade's Spirit Hall to mine after the expiration. The 3-month period was equivalent to a probation period, and as long as the newcomers performed well during this period, they could freely arrange their time to enter and exit Jade's Spirit Hall to mine. Henceforth, they could freely arrange their time to enter and exit the Spirit Jade Hall to mine. As for those who were tired, they politely declined. Walking in the familiar tunnel of the 10th mining area, Lin Yi could not help but secretly speculate. What was Meng Jueguang's intention of deliberately inviting him to this place? The characteristic of the 10th mining area was that there were few people. Apart from the usual 2 guards, there was no one else in the huge mining area. But so what? After all, the existence of the two guards was still a big problem. It was simply unrealistic to want to do something that could not be seen in the light under their eyes. If they attacked the two guards, then the matter would be blown out of proportion. At that time, no one would be able to escape responsibility. Or, this was Meng Jiuguang's intention. He wanted to find a place with few people to threaten him, but at the same time, he did not dare to find a completely empty place to avoid being killed by him. Lin Yi secretly clenched his fists. No matter what Meng Jiuguang was planning, he must put an end to this matter today. Otherwise, if the other really took advantage of him, he would never have a day of peace in the future. Success or failure depended on this one move. Entering the 10th mining area, which he had not seen for a long time, Lin Yi felt as if it was a lifetime ago. Under the eyes of the two guards, he looked around the mining area, but did not find anything unusual. This result was not unexpected. This was a mining area after all, and there were guards watching at all times. Even with Meng Jiuguang's connections, it would not be easy for him to do anything here. But even so, this guy still called him here. Did he really think that he could get rid of him just because he had a handle on his identity? Suppressing the doubts in his heart, Lin Yi immediately began to mine as if nothing had happened. Although Meng Jiuguang was a big trouble, and he must be eliminated quickly this time. But the more it was so, the more he needed to stabilize his mind. Even if it was purely for the consideration of confusing the enemy, he could not show too much abnormality. Just like that, he waited until noon, and Meng Jiuguang's figure finally appeared from the depths of the mining tunnel. As soon as he walked into the 10th mining area, he caught a glimpse of Lin Yi's back from afar. Meng Jiuguang's heart was suddenly filled with joy. As long as this guy appeared here, it meant that the fact that he was Lin Yi II was already set in stone. Otherwise, there was no need for him to keep the appointment at all. However, when he looked again, Meng Jiuguang could not help but feel a little more doubtful. Lin Yi was mining in full swing at the moment. It did not look like he was here to keep the appointment at all. If it was any other normal person, if their identity was in the hands of someone else, they would not say panic, but at least feel uneasy. At such a critical time, who would be in the mood to mine? Could it be that this guy was pretending? Meng Jiuguang could not help but mutter in his heart. But if he wanted to fool me with such a small trick, he was looking down on me too much. Glancing at the two guards next to him, Meng Jiuguang immediately walked behind Lin Yi, who was busy mining. He applauded and ridiculed, "Young hero Lin, you are indeed a mining expert who has repeatedly created miracles. Your actions and efficiency, TSK, you can be a model." Chapter 3950. At this point, you still don't give up and still want to continue pretending. Your acting is not bad, but it's a pity that it's all in vain in front of me. Meng Jiuguang curled his lips in disdain, then he said with a ferocious face, "I say, are you sick of pretending? Young hero Lin, or should I say, you prefer another name, Lin Air?" Lin Yi was still indifferent and continued to mine without saying a word. Although at this point, he couldn't hide anything by remaining silent, but he wanted to see what kind of evidence Meng Jiuguang had in his hands. You still think you can continue to deceive everyone? You really won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Fine, I'll be merciful and show you something to destroy this unrealistic fantasy of yours. Meng Jiuguang snorted coldly, then he took out something from his arms. It was the spiritual jade that he exchanged from the stall owner in the market last time. Glancing at this spiritual jade that had some flaws, Lin Yi's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Then he suddenly realized that no wonder Meng Jiuguang was so sure. He really found a fatal flaw. For this spiritual jade, because there were some flaws on it, although Lin Yi didn't pay special attention to it, he still had some impression of it. At that time, he didn't pay much attention to it. After all, it was impossible for him to guess that this spiritual jade was personally marked by Meng Jiuguang. And after the transaction, the probability of it falling into the hands of the original owner could be said to be very small. Even if such a small probability event really happened, in theory, it wouldn't pose any threat to Lin Yi. But he didn't expect that there would be such a coincidence in the world. Obviously, he had been extremely careful in everything he did, but because of this negligence that couldn't even be called negligence, he was caught by Meng Jueguang. In this regard, Lin Yi could only laugh bitterly in his heart. The affairs of the world are truly unpredictable. Meng Jueguang smiled proudly after noticing Lin Yi's expression. Yo, looks like young hero Lin has finally come to terms with reality. Say, if I give this to the Southern Sky Gate, what will happen if I explain the cause and effect to them? What do you want? Lin Yi finally spoke. Now that things had developed to this point, it was completely impossible to rely on sophistry to get away with it. He could only face it head-on. TSK, what a scary look. Young hero Lin is a cornered dog that will do something desperate. Are you planning to kill me to silence me? Meng Jueguang pretended to be alarmed and patted his chest. With an unpredictable tone, he said, speaking of which, young hero Lin is really an amazing person. As a newcomer from the secular world, you have such powerful strength. So powerful that you can even kill a peak late-stage foundation establishment expert like Nan Tianyong. I, Meng Jueguang, am probably just a reckless clown in your eyes, right? Although these words were said in a strange tone. But in reality, after discovering Lin Yi's identity, Meng Jueguang was indeed frightened to the point that his hair stood on end. He was literally drenched in cold sweat. No matter what, the fact that Lin Yi was able to kill Nan Tianyong was simply too shocking. It was simply too horrifying. Even a peak late stage of the foundation establishment realm could be killed in one move. Didn't that mean that Meng Jueguang, a mere mid-stage of the foundation establishment realm, wasn't even worthy of Lin Yi's attention? He had always thought that Lin Yi was just so. Even if he could repeatedly defeat Meng Tong and even Murong Zhen, he was still in the category of newcomers. If he could fight personally, even if there were 100 Lin Yi, he would have long been dead. Now that he thought about it, the idea was laughable. It was fortunate that Lin Yi didn't have the chance to fight him. Otherwise, with all the things he'd done before, if he'd given Lin Yi even the slightest chance, Lin Yi would have been dead by now. Do you really want to kill me in one move? So that you can avoid future troubles? Meng Jueguang's face was full of ridicule. He pointed at the two guards in the distance with his mouth and sneered fearlessly. Unfortunately, although this place is a dead mining area, the number of guards is never less than 2. Even if I'm not your opponent, can you deal with these 2 guards at the same time? Besides, even if you can kill these 2 guards at the same time, do you have the confidence to escape the joint pursuit of Spirit Jade Hall and Law Enforcement Hall, young hero Lin? Hearing this, Lin Yi smiled noncommittally and shook his head. So much nonsense and beating around the bush. Are you really that afraid of me, senior brother Meng? Afraid? Of course I'm afraid. I'm scared to death of you right now. Meng Jueguang deliberately put on an expression of extreme fear. Then his expression changed again. He picked up the spiritual jade that was used to threaten Lin Yi and snorted coldly. But young hero Lin, there's one thing I advise you not to misunderstand. I'm not afraid that you'll kill me, but I'm afraid that you won't be able to give me what I want and force me to look for Southern Heavenly Gate. That would be too disappointing, wouldn't it? Sure enough, a troublesome fellow. Lin Yi lightly exhaled and said indifferently, Tell me, what is it that you want? Not bad, not bad. Looks like young hero Lin is quite sensible. This is for the best. Otherwise, it won't look good on everyone's faces. What I want is very simple. I believe young hero Lin will definitely satisfy me, right? Humph. Meng Jueguang once again tossed the spiritual jade in his hand. You want spiritual jade? How much? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. If Meng Jueguang's appetite was limited to spiritual jade, then it wouldn't be a problem. He could get some spiritual jade to temporarily calm Meng Jueguang down and then find a chance to get rid of him. That would be a good plan. Unexpectedly, Meng Jueguang suddenly burst out laughing. Seeing that he had attracted the attention of the two guards, he lowered his voice again and said, "You dare to ask me how much I want? Young hero Lin, are you joking? If a pile of gold or a chicken that lays golden eggs were placed in front of you, which would you choose?" "I see." Lin Yi finally understood. As expected, with Meng Juoguang's greedy nature, he wouldn't be satisfied with a mere spiritual jade. This guy could deduce that Lin Yi had a way to recharge the jade, so it wasn't surprising that he had his eyes on it. A chicken that lays golden eggs? What do you mean? Lin Yi pretended to be confused. No matter what, there was no way he would let anyone know about the space in the jade pendant, which was related to his life. "I just praised you for being sensible, and now you're pretending. Young hero Lin, is it really okay for you to not cooperate? My temper may not be as good as you think. If you make me unhappy, I might sell you out to the Southern Sky Gate. I'm sure they won't mistreat me. What do you say, young hero Lin?" Meng Juoguang threatened with an unfriendly expression. Chapter 3951. Meng Juoguang, who originally had the absolute initiative and was confident that he could toy with Lin Yi in the palm of his hand, was stunned by Lin Yi's gaze. He subconsciously took a step back in fright. After a moment, Meng Juoguang came to his senses and said with a cold expression, "It's useless to quibble. The ironclad evidence is right here. You must have a way to quickly recharge the waste jade. You only have two choices now. One is to tell me about it. This is good for both of us. As for the second, I don't think I need to explain the consequences when the time comes." Lin Yi was silent for a moment, then finally opened his mouth and said, "Do you really want to know about the method to recharge waste jade into good jade?" "Nonsense. If it wasn't for this, do you think you would still be alive today? These people from the Southern Heavenly Gate would have gotten rid of you long ago, young hero Lin." Meng Juoguang sneered. "Fine, I can tell you about this. But after that, how can I guarantee that you won't kill me after I've outlived my usefulness?" Lin Yi said in an unpredictable tone. From his point of view, it was normal for him to not trust Meng Juoguang. Meng Juoguang was not surprised at all. He immediately sneered and said, "Young hero Lin, I thought you were very smart. I didn't expect that when it comes to the critical moment, you're no different from a stupid ordinary person. Just think about it. If I expose you, I won't be able to keep this secret. What good would that do me? With such a heaven-defying method, of course, I should leave one person alive to make a fortune." These words were not empty words. Looking at the entire heavenly stage island, although many forces had mastered the method to recharge waste jade, they were all similar to the spirit jade hull. They needed to spend hundreds of years to do so. In contrast, if Lin Yi really had mastered the method to quickly recharge waste jade, then the degree of heaven-defying would be absolutely shocking. Even if it was for his own benefit, Meng Juoguang would never let a third person know. After all, to him, that was 100 disadvantages. There was no advantage to it. "All right, as long as you understand." Lin Yi nodded. He then pointed at the two guards in the distance and said indifferently, "What about those two? Don't you need to think of a way to get rid of them? If they accidentally hear or see us, it will be very bad." Meng Juoguang was stunned, but he quickly understood Lin Yi's intentions. He snorted and said, "Young hero Lin, I advise you not to waste your efforts. You want to send those two guards away and then take the opportunity to attack me? What wishful thinking." Meng Juoguang was not an idiot. In this kind of situation, what he needed to avoid the most was to be alone with Lin Yi. Based on the difference in their strength, if Lin Yi wanted to kill him, it would be no different from killing a chicken. After all, he was a ferocious character who could even kill an expert at the peak of the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm in a second. At this distance, as long as I keep my voice down, they won't be able to hear me. I will specially release a Jinshi barrier to block them off. Moreover, if my guess is not wrong, your secret to quickly recharging waste jades should be hidden in mine number 10. You've done it so many times under their noses without being discovered, so there shouldn't be any problems now. So don't try to play any tricks. Do you understand what I mean, young hero Lin? Meng Jiuguang warned with an unfriendly expression. Little did he know that his speculation and threat, which he thought was smart, provided Lin Yi with ideas and clues. Without his words, it would have been very troublesome to fabricate a decent lie. However, now that he had Meng Jiuguang's presumptuous speculation as a reference, it would be much easier to deceive him. Lin Yi's eyes lit up when he heard that. His mind raced. If that was the case, it might be a rare opportunity if he made good use of it. Well, since it has come to this, I won't hide it anymore. You guessed it right. The secret to turning waste jades into good jades lies in mine number 10. It's also because of this that I was able to dig up good jades here. Lin Yi's expression was mixed with a trace of helplessness. The more helpless Lin Yi was, the happier Meng Jiuguang felt. He would not be on guard, and the easier it was for the lie to come true in his eyes. It's just as I expected. No wonder in this dead mining area, no one, including us, can dig up good jades, but only you can. I said there must be something fishy about it. Meng Jiuguang's face was full of foresight. In retrospect, because Lin Yi kept digging up good jades here, he and Meng Tong had racked their brains and wasted a lot of energy in this place. In the end, they were still rebuffed and finally had to give up. However, according to what Lin Yi said, if they had persisted for a while, they might have found out the secret long ago. They wouldn't have waited until now. Meng Jiuguang secretly regretted it for a while. Then, he impatiently urged, "Tell me, what is the secret?" The secret is very simple. In this dead mining area number 10, there is a super spiritual eye. The concentration of spiritual qi is beyond imagination. Any piece of waste jade can be quickly charged up in a short period of time and become a good jade with abundant spiritual qi. Lin Yi organized his story in a short period of time. Super spiritual eye? Although Meng Jiuguang had guessed it long ago, he still felt it was a little unbelievable after hearing Lin Yi's words. He said in disbelief, "Is this really possible? Even if something like the super spiritual eye really exists, why would it appear in this dead mining area? Then why is there only waste jade here, and not a single good jade can be dug out?" Lin Yi shook his head and said indifferently, "Don't misunderstand. The super spiritual eye that I'm talking about doesn't always exist. It only appears at certain times. Moreover, it moves. It could be here one moment, but the next moment, it could escape to some unknown place. It could even disappear. It's not impossible. So troublesome." Meng Jiuguang couldn't help but frown. Lin Yi's story sounded unimaginable at first. However, when he thought about it carefully, it was quite plausible. Even an astute person like him wouldn't be able to tell that it was fake in a short period of time. However, this situation was a little different from what he had expected. The super spiritual eye was very small, and it could change and move at any time. This meant that there were various restrictions when it came to operating it. It was slightly unrealistic to want to use it to quickly fish out a large amount of spiritual jades. However, even if the operation was a little complicated and troublesome, as long as he could quickly turn waste jade into good jade, then it wouldn't be a big problem. In the end, there was still a way to make a fortune. At most, it would just take a little more time. Chapter 3952. About this, because the range of the super spiritual eye is very small, I can only find it if I use my qi to sense it. I'll say the ugly words first, this still depends on luck. As he spoke, Lin Yi looked at Meng Jiuguang indifferently, without any signs of lying. Depends on luck? What you're saying is, if I can't find the super spiritual eye, then it's my bad luck, and it has nothing to do with you? Meng Jiuguang laughed coldly, and said with a sinister face, "What a pity, young hero Lin, your little tricks are useless in front of me. I have to tell you a piece of bad news, you have to find the super spiritual eye by today, or else what?" Lin Yi asked indifferently. "Then you can only blame your bad luck." At that time, I will have a reason to think that the super spiritual I is a lie you made up to fool me, and the consequences will be very serious. What do you say, young hero Lin? Meng Jueguang threatened with a sinister smile. On this point, Meng Jueguang was still very clever. Before seeing the actual results, if Lin Yi thought that he could get away with a lie he made up at the last minute, then he would be gravely mistaken. For this kind of thing, one would not release the eagle without seeing the rabbit. That was the logic and awareness that a smart person should have. Okay. Lin Yi looked deeply at Meng Jueguang, and then stopped mining. He placed his hand on the stone wall, and then continuously poured qi into it. Seeing this, Meng Jueguang could not help but believe it a little. This action was very similar to what Lin Yi said, using qi to search for the super spiritual I. However, this kind of stupid method, even without trying it, could be seen that it was very strenuous. Luckily, there was Lin Yi, this free labor. Meng Jueguang felt that if he were to do it himself, not to mention whether or not he could successfully find the super spiritual I, he would definitely waste all his qi. He was not like Lin Yi who could replenish his true qi at any time. If he used up all his true qi, he did not know how long it would take to recover it. Just thinking about it made him feel bitter. Seeing Lin Yi's hand on the stone wall for a long time without any movement, Meng Jueguang could not help but frown and say, "Hey, can you do it or not? Don't think that you can bluff your way out of this. If you can't find the super spiritual I guarantee that you will die a miserable death." Lin Yi turned his head to look at him, and said indifferently, "Although the concentration of the spiritual qi in the super spirit I is very obvious, the range is extremely small, and the changes are rapid. Even I would find it hard to find it in a short period of time. If you don't even have this bit of patience, you should give up as soon as possible." After saying that, Lin Yi turned around and moved to another place, continuing his previous actions. "TSK, you have a way with words. But it's fine, haste makes waste. Anyway, I will only give you half a day's time. If you still can't find the super spiritual I by the end of the day, you can just wait to die a miserable death." Meng Jueguang said with a sinister smile, and then no longer said anything. He just stood behind Lin Yi and looked at him coldly. Lin Yi could not help but secretly smile when he heard that. "Still want to wait until the end of the day? Don't worry, you won't be able to live until then." The two guards looked at Lin Yi and Meng Jueguang's strange actions from afar, and could not help but look at each other in dismay. Coming to this kind of place and not mining, but randomly touching the stone wall, what kind of situation was this? If it was someone else who was so lazy, the two guards would have already stepped forward to reprimand him. But this time, they chose to turn a blind eye. After all, Meng Jueguang had always been popular in the Spirit Jade Hall, and the two of them were just ordinary guards. There was no need to offend Meng Jueguang for such a small matter and find trouble for themselves. Moreover, Lin Yi had worked here for more than 3 months, and had a good relationship with them. Naturally, they would not come forward to make things difficult for them. The two guards turned a blind eye, and Lin Yi and Meng Jueguang were also happy to do so. For the two of them, it was the best that the two guards could be so tactful and not cause trouble. Time passed by bit, and a full 6 hours had passed from noon. The sky outside was getting dark, and the time to end the day was getting closer and closer. At this time, Lin Yi had almost walked around the entire 10th mining area. There were already more than 20 places where he had stopped. To be precise, there were 22. "Hey, I have to remind you that the work is going to end soon. Although I personally do not like this result, but it seems that we are destined not to cooperate well. This is the will of heaven," Meng Jueguang said with a face of impatience. After holding back for a whole afternoon, his patience had been completely worn out. Lin Yi still silently put his hand on the stone wall, and continued to instill genuine qi. This was the 23rd, and also the last one in his plan. "To be honest, for a newcomer like you who is so excellent that it is almost legendary, I originally wanted to take this opportunity to cooperate with you from now on. It is really a pity. Meng Jueguang suddenly sighed. What he said was indeed from the bottom of his heart. After all, he was about to be promoted to the position of third pavilion master, but he did not even have a capable subordinate. If this were to spread, it would be too shameful. Although Meng Tong had been reborn after taking the Meridian heart-shattering pill, and seemed to have become slightly more reliable compared to the helpless Ah Do in the past, it was a pity that he was still far from being a match for Lin Yi. Now, he was beaten half to death and could not get out of bed. As for Murong Zhen, compared to Meng Tong, she was indeed much more reliable, but this woman was very scheming. Even if she slept with him, she would not be of the same mind as Meng Jueguang. She was like a poisonous snake, who could show its ferocious fangs at any time. Neither of these two people were people that Meng Jueguang could truly rely on. Now that he had this perfect opportunity, if he could subdue Lin Yi, it would be ideal for him. Not to mention that his strength was far above those two people, because he had a fatal weakness in his hands, he did not have to worry about his loyalty. He was practically a puppet that was tailor-made for Meng Jueguang. The stronger Lin Yi was, the happier he would be. Unfortunately, compared to a puppet subordinate, Meng Jueguang cared more about spiritual jades. If Lin Yi could not truthfully reveal the secret of how waste jades could quickly become good jades, then he could only choose to kill him. Hearing this, Lin Yi retracted his hand. Everything was ready. He smiled playfully and said, "Is that so? That's a pity. If you had said so earlier, you might have had a slight chance to keep your life." What? Meng Jueguang was instantly stunned. From Lin Yi's strange words, he felt an unusual sense of danger. Chapter 3953. Nothing. Lin Yi shook his head lightly, then squinted his eyes and said, "If you have any last words, senior brother Meng can stay. Although you and I are not the same kind of people, no matter what, we are still brothers in the same pavilion. I can still help you with this little bit of help." What the fuck are you talking about? Meng Jueguang suddenly felt guilty. Even if he held Lin Yi's fatal weakness in his hands, because of the difference in strength, the weak would naturally be afraid of the strong. This was innate and inevitable. Strictly speaking, he, Meng Jueguang and Lin Yi were both masters in the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, so it was not certain that he would not have the power to fight. It was a pity that Lin Yi once had the magnificent feat of killing Nan Tianyong, a master at the peak of the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. In the eyes of any normal person, including Meng Jueguang himself, they would not think that they could fight with such an abnormal monster. It was no different from sending themselves to death. The intention of Lin Yi's words could not be more obvious. Feeling the waves of killing intent emitted from his body, Meng Jueguang could not help but feel creeped out. He said in horror, "You actually want to kill me? Are you crazy? You actually want to kill me in such a place? Do you think you don't have to die?" Meng Jueguang had already considered the possibility of Lin Yi taking the risk to kill him, but in his opinion, this possibility was very small. Lin Yi was such a promising and intelligent newcomer. As long as he was not forced into a dead end, as long as there was a chance of turning around, he would never take the risk. Although there were few people on this occasion, there were still 2 guards watching from a distance. If Lin Yi dared to make a move, it would be equivalent to smashing a jar. No matter whether he could successfully kill Meng Jueguang or not, at least he would definitely die, and it would definitely be a very tragic death. No matter how strong Lin Yi was, he was just a newcomer. In front of leviathans like the Law Enforcement Hall and Spirit Jade Hall, as well as the 3 great pavilions, it was not worth mentioning at all. However, Lin Yi smiled indifferently. He turned around and said, "Under normal circumstances, it is indeed not convenient to kill you, but if you died in a mine accident, there should be no problem." Mine disaster? Meng Jueguang was startled, but before he could react, Lin Yi was already walking towards the tunnel of the mining area with the spiritual jade basket in his hand, looking like he was ready to hand over the work. In an instant, Meng Jueguang was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. If what Lin Yi said was true, that he was not killed by Lin Yi, but died in a mine accident, then even if he died, it would be in vain, and no one would associate it with Lin Yi. However, immediately, Meng Jueguang suddenly laughed hysterically, pointing at Lin Yi's back and mocking, "Your wish is very wonderful, but unfortunately, a mine accident will not happen for hundreds of years. Placing your hope on such an unrealistic thing, should I say that young hero Lin is stupid, or have you reached a dead end? Mine accidents may be very common in the secular world. But in this heaven stage island, especially in the mining area directly under the jurisdiction of the three great pavilions, Spirit Jade Hall, under the careful protection of all kinds of formations, the probability of a mine accident was as small as Meng Jueguang said. In fact, in the past 100 years, there was no record of any mine accident under the jurisdiction of Spirit Jade Hall. Generally speaking, because every mining area was guarded, if there was even a little bit of abnormality, it would be discovered and repaired very quickly. The Spirit Jade Hall attached great importance to this matter. And taking a step back, even if a mine accident really did happen, if it was of a normal degree, for a master in the middle stage of the foundational level like Meng Jueguang, it would not be life-threatening. Unless it was a legendary nightmarish mine collapse. Of course, something like a mine collapse might not even happen once in 1,000 years, so there was no need to consider it. Therefore, after being scared out of his wits, Meng Jueguang quickly regained his composure. A mine accident was simply nonsense. Hearing this, Lin Yi's footsteps paused, and he looked back at him, desperate. After all, you know too much. If I don't bury you here today, it will be very troublesome for me. Meng Jueguang was startled. Just as he was about to open his mouth to ridicule, his face suddenly changed. In the cave wall behind him, suddenly began to tremble violently, and then a crack appeared. A trace of domineering qi emerged from it. How is this possible? What the hell is this guy doing? Meng Jueguang was suddenly horrified. Before, he could still listen to the mine accident mentioned by Lin Yi as a joke, but now even cracks began to appear on the heavily guarded cave wall. The mine accident had become a reality. After realizing that something was wrong, Meng Jueguang did not hesitate to turn around and run. Although with his strength in the middle stage of the foundational level, he had the confidence to deal with a normal mine accident, but if there was a chance, it was better to run away quickly. What's more, no matter how unbelievable it was, this mining disaster was most likely Lin Yi's doing. This was something that could be figured out even with his toes. If he let his guard down, he might fail miserably in an easy task. Meng Jueguang's reaction was extremely fast. However, before he could run more than a few steps, the cave wall behind him suddenly exploded. At the same time, the other 22 points that Lin Yi had checked exploded at the same time. Boom! The layers of protective formations in the mine collapsed in an instant, and the huge mine number 10 suddenly collapsed. Countless pieces of rubble, some of which were even mixed with a lot of spirit jades, were sent flying everywhere. Even the roof of the cave began to collapse with a loud rumble. It was a horrifying scene of doomsday. As expected, 23 true qi bombs exploding at the same time is enough to create a man-made mine accident. Lin Yi looked back at the scene and nodded to himself. In the afternoon, for more than 6 hours, under the name of investigating the super spiritual eyes, he had planted 23 true qi bombs in the cave wall under Meng Jueguang's nose. As long as he controlled them to explode at the same time, it was possible to create a man-made mine accident, and then he could bury Meng Jueguang here. This was Lin Yi's plan. He did not know how much power was needed to penetrate the various protective formations here, so he spent so much time and exerted the power he could control to the limit. Chapter 3954. This was the best opportunity to bury Meng Jueguang, and it was also the only opportunity. Once it failed, there would not be such an opportunity in the future. Meng Jueguang would definitely contact the Southern Sky Gate in desperation, and the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, in order to ensure that nothing went wrong this time, Lin Yi had to go all out. If possible, let alone 23 vital qi bombs, even 230 vital qi bombs would not be a problem. However, Judging from the current situation, the power of the 23 vital chi bombs had not only successfully triggered the expected mine disaster, but it was also more than enough. It could even be said that the power was too much, far beyond Lin Yi's imagination. In the midst of the chaos, Lin Yi suddenly noticed a piece of spiritual jade bursting out from the side, forcibly penetrating the 5-meter-thick stone pillar of the mine. Its terrifying penetrative power and lethality really made one's scalp tingle. The spiritual jade was very hard, far harder than ordinary rocks. It might not be a problem in normal times, but at this moment, it was undoubtedly a deadly weapon. The spirit chi in the mining area was rich to begin with. Even in the number 10 dead mining area, there were countless spiritual jades buried deep behind the stone walls, so there was no doubt that the spirit chi was also rich. In this enclosed space with rich spirit chi, it was simply a natural super-large spirit chi bomb. Judging from the signs, under the guidance of Lin Yi's 23 vital chi bombs, this super-large spiritual chi bomb was already showing signs of exploding. Once it really developed to this stage, the spiritual chi in the mine would explode, and after obtaining unparalleled speed, together with its hardness and penetrative power, then every piece of spiritual jade here would be a great killing weapon. Even a golden core stage expert would not be able to escape unscathed. Lin Yi was suddenly shocked. He had no time to think further. Out of a subconscious self-protection reaction, he directly spurted vital chi from his whole body, and with an astonishing speed that exceeded his limit. His body shot toward the tunnel of the mining area like a cannonball. At this moment, Meng Jueguang was also struggling with all his might. However, because his position was much closer to the cave wall than Lin Yi's and his speed was much slower than Lin Yi's, he was swallowed by the rubble in the blink of an eye. According to Lin Yi's original plan, the power of the mine disaster alone might not be enough to bury Meng Jueguang, so the mine disaster was just a pretext. He intended to take advantage of the chaos to kill Meng Jueguang. Anyway, there were only 2 guards, and he only needed to act fast enough in the chaos. It was not difficult to do this without anyone noticing. However, there was no longer a need for that. Judging from the current situation, if he did not flee with all his might, even Lin Yi would be buried here. Ever since the first spiritual jade was shot, the situation had gone far beyond his control. Damn it. I still have to take over as the 3rd pavilion master. How can I die in such a godforsaken place? In the rubble, Meng Jueguang's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. His whole body was drenched in blood. He roared and desperately tried to chase after Lin Yi. Unfortunately, before he could finish his words, a piece of spiritual jade suddenly penetrated his chest from behind and pierced through his heart without any suspense. In an instant, Meng Jueguang had no heartbeat. To be precise, he had no heart. Immediately afterward, countless rubble, mixed with the daunting spiritual jades, whistled through his body from various parts. Meng Jueguang was instantly torn into pieces, and he could not be more dead. With his identity as the eldest senior brother in charge of the new disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion, he was able to weave a huge network of connections and even forced away the 3rd pavilion master, Lu Bianren, and replaced him. Meng Jueguang, who was omnipotent in the eyes of the new disciples, died a violent death. He had worked so hard for so long, and the thing that he dreamed of was within his reach, but in the end, he could not take over the position of the 3rd pavilion master. Meng Jueguang, who was engulfed by the rubble, could not close his eyes in the end. His blank and lifeless eyes were filled with resentment and unwillingness, and he died with everlasting regret. Phew. Lin Yi noticed this scene from the corner of his eye, and he immediately let out a long breath. Although things had progressed beyond his expectations, as long as he could successfully bury Meng Jueguang here, everything would be fine. After all, this guy knew about the flaw in his identity, and he had solid evidence in his hands. The threat was too great, and he had to die. However, just when Lin Yi slightly relaxed, a huge force came from behind him. Even though he was wrapped in a super strong protective chi, he could not help but spit out a big mouthful of blood under the huge force. Lin Yi glanced behind him, and he felt lucky. This time, he was hit by a stone slab. If it was a more penetrating stone, or a more terrifying spiritual jades, he would have been half-crippled even if he did not die. Although the impact of the stone slab had caused Lin Yi to suffer serious injuries, there was one good thing about it. It increased his escape speed, and at the same time, he had an additional protective shield behind him. At least, it could block a lot of the stone slab attacks, and he would not be seriously injured again. Mine collapse? It can't be. It was not until this moment that the two guards not far from the entrance of the mining area realized that the situation was not good, and both of them looked horrified. The two of them were so scared that their faces turned pale. They could only watch helplessly as the stream of rocks mixed with spiritual jade bombs came closer and closer. They knew that they would die if they continued to stay here, but their legs seemed to be filled with lead and didn't listen to them at all. Seeing that the two were about to be swallowed by the mine collapse, a figure suddenly hit them, and the three of them rolled into the mine tunnel, narrowly escaping the disaster. At the same time, the other mining areas were also rumbling. Although there was not a large-scale mine collapse like the number 10 mining area, there were also constant stones falling from the top of the mine, which was the precursor of a linked mine disaster. For a time, all the mining areas were panicking. In the face of a mine disaster, even the powerful cultivators might not be able to guarantee that they could escape unscathed. Although there were not many mine disasters in history, the number of people who died each time was not small. No one was willing to be the unlucky soul of a mine disaster. With a burst of panic and exclamations, everyone hurriedly fled. The entire Lingyu Hall was in a great panic. This day was destined to be recorded in the history books. Not only Lingyu Hall, but the entire 3 pavilions were alarmed. A mine disaster of a general degree was already very rare. As for a mine collapse of such a degree, it was even more rare to encounter in 1,000 years. It was impossible for the 3 pavilions not to be shocked. After the accident, the Elders' Council responded at the first time. They specifically sent an elder to Lingyu Hall and ordered Lingyu Hall to assist them in dealing with the aftermath. At the same time, the Law Enforcement Hall also immediately intervened to investigate the cause of the incident. Chapter 3955. Judging from the severity, it could be confirmed that this was a mine collapse that happened once in 1,000 years. However, because the initial mine collapse point was the number 10 dead mining area, only a few pieces of spiritual jade could be contributed in a year. Although the other mining areas were also affected, it was not a big problem. As long as the protection was reinforced, mining could be carried out as usual. Therefore, the loss of spiritual jade caused by the mine collapse could be said to be negligible. As for the casualties, the final statistics were also very small, only 1 dead and 13 injured. The one who died was naturally Meng Jueguang. In addition to Lin Yi and the 2 guards of the number 10 mining area, there were also 10 people injured in the other mining areas. Most of them were caused by fighting during the escape. But even so, this mine collapse was still taken seriously. After all, the one who died was Meng Jueguang. The appointment letter of the 3rd Pavilion Master of the Welcome Pavilion had already been drafted. Without a doubt, he had already entered the ranks of the top management of the Welcome Pavilion. He could be regarded as the martyr of the highest level in all the previous mine collapses of Spirit Jade Hall. At the level of Meng Jueguang, there was no need to mine personally. Even the number of times he went into the mine was not too many. He did not need to be in the front line. Naturally, he would not appear in the list of martyrs. Only this time, Meng Jueguang was the only exception. The death of Meng Jueguang immediately caused a sensation in all directions. Needless to say, the Welcome Pavilion. After the news came, from the Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng to the ordinary Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers, everyone was shocked and in a mess. In the Welcome Pavilion, the death of Meng Jueguang was almost no less than a reshuffle of power. Both were in the position of the 3rd Pavilion Master. However, the death of Meng Jueguang and the departure of Lu Bianren were 2 completely different concepts. As the previous 3rd Pavilion Master, Lu Bianren's departure was not a big change to the welcoming pavilion. That was because Meng Jiuguang had long since locked onto the position of the successor. This fat piece of meat that was in his mouth could not be taken away by anyone. Therefore, Lu Bianren's departure would not cause much chaos. However, Meng Jiuguang was different. He was just about to take over. He didn't even get the letter of appointment from the third pavilion master. His death was very sudden. It almost wiped out an unexpected blank space in the power hierarchy of the welcoming pavilion. Without a doubt, this was definitely a juicy piece of meat, but it was suddenly thrown in front of everyone when no one was mentally prepared. Chaos was inevitable when a group of dogs fought for food. Apart from that, the position left vacant by Meng Jiuguang's death was not only that of the third pavilion master of the welcoming pavilion, but also that of the eldest senior brother in charge of the newcomers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. For a time, it could be said that the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion were in a state of panic. Those with strength and skill would naturally want to take the opportunity to rise to the next level. Even if they could not extravagantly ask for the position of welcoming pavilion's third pavilion master, they were still the eldest senior brother who managed the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion. This position, which was not eye-catching but was extremely important, was also coveted by many. However, most of the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion did not consider this problem. They did not have the strength to compete with others. The only thing they wanted to do now was to protect themselves. Originally, when Meng Jiuguang was still alive, there was no problem for them to rely on him, even under Lin Yi's strong performance. Meng Jiuguang's side was at a passive disadvantage, but it was not a big problem. After all, the arm could not twist the thigh. As long as Meng Jiuguang took the position of the third pavilion master, everything would be fine. However, now that their backer, Meng Jiuguang, had collapsed along with the mine collapse, what to do next was a big problem that concerned their future and even life and death. If they did not make a wise choice as soon as possible, it was hard to guarantee that Lin Yi would not make a move on them. When that time came, even if they were to hide like a tortoise, just simply ostracizing them would be enough to make them suffer. However, no matter what they thought in their hearts and what choice they made, they now had to depend on the mood of one person. This person was naturally Lin Yi. Previously, when Meng Jiuguang was still alive, he had been pressured by Lin Yi to the point of retreating step by step. Now that Meng Jiuguang was dead, Lin Yi's side was the dominant one. This had become an unavoidable reality. No matter what Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples wanted to do, they couldn't avoid Lin Yi, this big mountain. Therefore, they had to open their eyes and see clearly what Lin Yi's attitude was. Unfortunately, they could not come into contact with Lin Yi at all, because Lin Yi was currently being investigated by the Law Enforcement Hall. In the Law Enforcement Hall's interrogation room, Lin Yi looked at the Law Enforcement Hall expert in front of him and silently shook his head. The saying enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road was indeed true. The person in charge of the interrogation was surprisingly a familiar face, Ma Jian. Lin Yi could still clearly remember that although Ma Jian belonged to the Law Enforcement Hall, he was actually part of Su Lingchong's faction. In the previous newcomer assessment, he had secretly made a move against Lin Yi. Fortunately, Lin Yi's trump card was deep, so he could calmly deal with it. If it was any other newcomer, it was not impossible for them to die under this person's schemes. Strictly speaking, he did not know this Ma Jian, nor did he have any enmity with him in the past. There was no conflict between them. It was only because of his relationship with Su Lingchong that they walked on the opposite side. This time, it was probably no exception. Name, identity, tell me truthfully. Ma Jian casually crossed his legs as he sized up Lin Yi with a glance and sneered. Just as Lin Yi had expected, he had indeed received Su Lingchong's instructions this time. Not only was he to make things difficult for Lin Yi, if possible, he was to push all the blame onto Lin Yi and seize the opportunity to get rid of him. Meng Jiuguang's death was an enormous loss to Su Lingchong, this young master. Meng Jiuguang's ability had already obtained Su Lingchong's acknowledgement and was gradually brought into his inner circle, so he would be of great use in the future. Otherwise, it would be utterly impossible for Su Lingchong to give a large amount of cultivation resources and various rare medicinal pills to Meng Jueguang, and it was even to the extent that he specially asked his grandfather, Su Yuanzheng, to stand out and fight for the position of third pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion for him. In the future plans of this young master, Su Lingchong, Meng Jueguang was an existence that was similar to his right and left hand. Now that Meng Jueguang was dead, it was simply like cutting off an arm to him. Not only did it break his future wings, it caused all his previous investments to go down the drain at the same time. But the fortunate thing amidst the misfortune was that when the mine collapse occurred, Lin Yi and Meng Jueguang were at the same place. Moreover, they were at the starting point of the mine collapse. No matter what the exact inside story was, this gave Su Lingchong the opportunity to make a big fuss. Chapter 3956. Lin Yi looked at him and said lightly, "Lin Yi, a newcomer to Blue Cloud Pavilion. Where were you when the mine collapsed?" Ma Jian continued to ask with a cold face. "Mine number 10. Lin Yi answered. "Very good. Then at the time of the incident, were you with Meng Jueguang?" Ma Jian asked with a deeper meaning. "That's right." Lin Yi nodded immediately. This was something that the two guards had seen, so there was no way to hide it. In fact, there was really nothing to hide. "It's good that you admit it." Ma Jian smiled darkly and then asked, "Do you have any explanation for the sudden collapse of the mine?" "As far as I know, mine number 10 happened to be the source of the mine collapse, which means that the people closest to the mine collapse were only you and Meng Jueguang." Lin Yi shook his head lightly and replied, "I'm sorry, I'm not a professional. I have no clue as to why the mine collapse happened. It's useless no matter how close I was at the time." "No clue?" Ma Jian glanced at Lin Yi mockingly and said with certainty, "Then I'll reluctantly tell you. According to the professionals of Spirit Jade Hall, the direct cause of the mine collapse was the explosion of spiritual energy. However, with the density and activity of spiritual energy in mine number 10, not to mention an explosion, even the lowest level of protection array would not be able to destroy it. The only explanation for this abnormality is that someone tampered with it, which ultimately led to the explosion of spiritual energy." Lin Yi didn't say anything, but he couldn't help but feel a slight fluctuation in his heart. Although he didn't know whether it was true or not, at least Ma Jian's words sounded quite reasonable. If this was really the case, the plan to use the mine collapse to bury Meng Jueguang seemed to be a great success, but it couldn't be said to be perfect. At least there was a trace of flaw. "Oh. It seems like I've hit the nail on the head, right?" Ma Jian's eyes lit up, and he immediately smiled proudly. Then, he changed the topic again. "You and Meng Jueguang don't get along. This is no secret in the Welcome Pavilion, and at the time of the incident, the two of you happened to be together. Moreover, it was in the deserted 10th mining area. This really makes me very curious. Tell me, what were you two doing at that time?" "Mining," Lin Yi replied without batting an eyelid. "Mining?" Ma Jian was stunned for a moment, and then the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curve into a mocking smile. "Lin Yi, I seem to have forgotten to tell you in advance that joking is a taboo in our law enforcement hall, especially for a suspect like you. You will die very miserably." Mining in the mining area was the most standard answer, but it also depended on who it was. A person of Meng Jueguang's level actually went to the mining area personally, and he even did it in the godforsaken 10th mining area. If this wasn't a joke, then what was? "Sir, you seem to have misunderstood something. I was indeed mining at that time, but I didn't say that it also included Meng Jueguang." Lin Yi said lightly. "Then what was Meng Jueguang doing at that time? Don't tell me that you two were having a friendly conversation, or that he was cheering you on." Ma Jian said with a mocking expression. Lin Yi looked at him, and his expression was as calm as an ancient well. He said, "He was threatening me, saying that he was going to be promoted to the third pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion, so he wanted to force me to be his subordinate. Otherwise, he would remove senior brother Ku and replace him with Murong Zhen and Meng Tong as the new managers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, so that we would never be able to make a name for ourselves. Oh. If that's the case, then the atmosphere at that time wasn't very good. Any normal person wouldn't swallow such a threat, let alone you, the famous #1 newcomer of the Welcome Pavilion. I heard that Meng Jueguang couldn't suppress you before, so it's obvious that he wouldn't be able to subdue you with just a few words this time. Am I right? Ma Jian smiled evilly without a trace. What are you trying to say? Lin Yi narrowed his eyes. At this point, Ma Jian should finally reveal his true intentions. As expected, Ma Jian immediately said with evil intentions, "Can I speculate that because Meng Jueguang forced you, you held a grudge against him, or perhaps you wanted to eliminate the threat, so you secretly destroyed the 10th mining area's protective formation, causing a spiritual energy explosion, and used the collapse of the mine to kill Meng Jueguang?" Pa. Hearing this, Lin Yi smiled faintly and clapped a few times. Then, he said unhurriedly, "Your imagination is not bad, but to blame a mine collapse that only happens once in 1,000 years on a newcomer of my district, isn't this speculation a little too bold? Moreover, I remember that the Law Enforcement Hall only looks at evidence. If you can't produce any evidence, then can I take your words as slander and report it to the higher-ups of the Law Enforcement Hall? You want evidence?" Ma Jian suddenly smiled sinisterly, "Then I'll give you evidence. Although there weren't many people in the 10th mining area, you probably forgot one thing. At that time, besides you and Meng Jueguang, there were 2 other guards in the mining area who witnessed everything. They personally confessed that before the mine collapse, you were wandering around the 10th mining area abnormally and didn't mine properly at all. Needless to say, this was your preparation to cause the mine collapse. Isn't this evidence enough?" Lin Yi immediately became silent. Although everything that Ma Jian said and speculated was undoubtedly because he was instructed by Su Lingchong to mess with him, it was precisely because of this that he accidentally locked onto the murderer in advance. No matter how far-fetched such speculations and so-called evidence seemed to be, in the end, it could almost be equivalent to the truth. Until now, Ma Jian himself still didn't realize that his racking his brains to frame Lin Yi was actually the truth. A deeply hidden killing intent flashed across Lin Yi's eyes. He suddenly raised his head and looked straight at Ma Jian. "I'll say it again, your imagination is really rich. Unfortunately, it's too rich. The reason why I wandered around was purely because Meng Jueguang had been bothering me. He didn't want me to mine properly and kept tormenting me. I had no choice but to endure it." You still want to quibble when a disaster is imminent? You're simply daydreaming. Do you think I'll believe you?" Ma Jian sneered. Lin Yi looked at him with a faint smile and said indifferently, "It doesn't matter whether you believe me or not. I'm just a newbie. I casually wandered around the 10th mining area and caused a mine collapse. I even used it to kill Meng Jueguang. Why don't you guess what other people would think of such a ridiculous logic?" Chapter 3957. What a joke. Since when does our law enforcement hall need to look at other people's expressions? Aren't you looking down on our law enforcement hall too much? Or are you looking down on our hall master? Ma Jian spoke in an aloof and disdainful tone. In the past, the law enforcement hall still had rules to follow. But after Ram Jia took office, under his leadership, the people under him could be said to be unscrupulous. In order to achieve their goals, they could do anything. They were recognized by the 3 great pavilions as the most tyrannical and overbearing in the history of the law enforcement hall, but at the same time, they were also the most capable generation. Most of the time, even the Elders Guild could not criticize Ram Jia and his subordinates. As for the public opinion of the outside world, they were completely disregarded. Just think about it, even the death of the Soaring Sky Pavilion supervising Deacon Nan Tianyong, who was on the same side, could be ignored to the point of not asking about it, just because Hallmaster Gong Yangjia was not interested in it. In this case, only Meng Jueguang had died, so naturally, it was not enough to enter Gong Yangjia's eyes. According to the current rules of the Law Enforcement Hall, as long as Hall Master Gong Yangjie didn't interfere in the middle of a case, then his subordinates had absolute authority over the case. They didn't need to care about what the outside world or the higher-ups of the three great pavilions thought. This was because Gong Yangjie would bear all the pressure for them without any worries. This was where Ma Jian's confidence came from. Ram Jie definitely had no interest in this kind of small case. Under his protection, as long as he made up a reasonable excuse, Ma Jian could do whatever he wanted. Therefore, the matter of Su Lingchong asking him to get rid of Lin Yi was simply a piece of cake in his eyes. This was completely out of Lin Yi's expectation. He was caught unprepared. In a place like the Law Enforcement Hall, and in the hands of Ma Jian, this time it was really a bit difficult. Ma Jian's strength was not considered strong. Lin Yi was confident that he could deal with him. However, if he dared to make a move in the Law Enforcement Hall's territory, then needless to say, he would definitely die. Even if he had 10 lives, it wouldn't be enough for him to die, unless Shangguan Laner intervened forcefully. Of course, this was a last resort, and Lin Yi believed that it was impossible for Shanghai Laner to turn a blind eye to it. It was just that this last resort was equivalent to admitting that the mine collapse was caused by him. "What do you want?" Lin Yi asked in a deep voice. This was the only way to deal with this situation. He could only take it one step at a time. "What do I want?" Ma Jian laughed and said proudly, "Of course I don't want to do anything. I'm a law enforcer, and you're the murderer who caused the mine collapse and killed Meng Jueguang. I'm just doing my job. I'm going to send you to the guillotine." Ma Jian originally thought that after he finished speaking, Lin Yi would definitely panic like a normal person. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi did not panic at all. Instead, he calmly raised his eyebrows and said, "Speaking of which, does your hall master, Ram Jia, know that you're acting so recklessly and covering the sky with one hand?" No matter how Ram Jia controlled his subordinates, no matter how he shielded his own people. But at least one thing was certain. No one in power would want a subordinate who acted recklessly. They only needed an obedient and capable watchdog. They wouldn't need a wastrel who acted on his own. This was the iron law. No matter how monolithic the law enforcement hall was, it must have its own internal rules. Even if Ram Jia didn't intervene personally. But this kind of case was absolutely impossible for Ma Jian to cover the sky with one hand. Otherwise, the law enforcement hall would have long been rotten. How could it have the power and influence it had today? "Hey, kid, is your brain broken? Or do you really think that you're a big shot after being called the #1 newcomer in the welcoming pavilion? Let me tell you, trash like you can't even be considered as a green onion. You can't even enter the eyes of our hall master Ram. So, you better give up on this thought as soon as possible. I dare to guarantee that even if I send you to the guillotine, Hall Master Ram will absolutely not spare you a glance." Ma Jian laughed without the slightest scruple. However, before he finished laughing, the secret door of the interrogation room suddenly opened. A person came in and said a few words in his ear. Ma Jian's face suddenly changed. Those two ants, do they really dare to say that? Did they turn a deaf ear to what I said to them before? Ma Jian clenched his teeth and clenched his fist. So that's how it is. Lin Yi's heart was relieved. Although the other person's voice was very low, with his extraordinary perception, he could more or less hear the general situation. The matter that the person told Ma Jian was about the confession of the two guards in the number 10 mining area. These two people were closest to the starting point of the mine collapse. They were summoned to be investigated like Lin Yi. Of course, the two of them were different from Lin Yi. Lin Yi was identified as a murderer by Ma Jian, and they were used as witnesses to convict Lin Yi. As early as the first time he took over the case, Ma Jian had already hinted to the two of them. What they should say and what they shouldn't say had already been recorded. In fact, in Ma Jian's plan, these two people didn't even need to deliberately make false testimonies like witnessing Lin Yi kill someone. They only needed to slightly embellish the situation of that day and tilt things in the direction of Lin Yi. As long as there was a reasonable logic, coupled with the confession of these two so-called witnesses, Ma Jian could firmly pin the crime on Lin Yi's head. If everything went well, it would not be difficult to send him to the guillotine. Originally, everything was under Ma Jian's control. However, what he didn't expect was that it was precisely the two guards that he had the most confidence in, who were not worth mentioning, that both of them had now betrayed him. Not only did the two guards not follow his instructions to make the confession against Lin Yi, but they also opened their mouths to exonerate Lin Yi. After Meng Jueguang came to mining area number 10, I don't know if it was for testing something or for some other reason. Anyway, he forced Lin Yi to dig everywhere. As a result, the mine collapsed. It's hard to say if there is a direct connection between the two, but even if there is a connection, the root cause is Meng Jueguang. He deserved to die in the mine collapse, and it has nothing to do with Lin Yi. These were the original words of the two guards. Although there were slight discrepancies between their words, the meaning was exactly the same. Hearing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but secretly rejoice in his heart. Fortunately, he saved the two guards when the mine collapse happened. Fortunately, these two were not people who would bite the hand that fed them. Otherwise, if they really gave false testimonies, he wouldn't be able to reason with them. Damn it, wouldn't it be a waste of effort? Chapter 3958. Before any case came to a conclusion, there must be evidence, no matter how far-fetched the evidence was, but there must be. This was the iron law that Ram Jia personally set down. From top to bottom in the law enforcement hall, no matter who it was, absolutely did not dare to go against it in the slightest. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. As long as the two guards did not testify against Lin Yi, Ma Jian would not have any evidence in his hands. Then, he would be unable to complete Su Lingchong's instructions and would not be able to touch a single hair on Lin Yi. Lord Law Enforcement Envoy, if there's nothing else, can I leave? Lin Yi patted his butt and stood up with a carefree expression. Wait, when did this law enforcement envoy say that you can leave? Or do you think that the law enforcement hall is a place that you can come and go as you please? Ma Jian said with an unfriendly expression. When Lin Yi heard this, he glanced at him and said with a smile that was not a smile, then what do you want? If I didn't hear wrongly earlier, you don't have the so-called evidence in your hands at all. Just for the sake of helping Su Lingchong settle a personal grudge, you're disregarding the law enforcement hall's rules. Are you sure that doing this is appropriate? Ma Jian was startled when he heard this, then he could not help but fly into a rage out of humiliation, and his face was extremely gloomy. Chapter 3959. Hee, you can't hold back anymore? What a complete idiot. This way, this enforcer can even save the chance to use the soul-searching technique. I really don't know why young Master Su would put trash like you in his eyes. Ma Jian sneered with a smug expression. Most people feared the law enforcement hall like a tiger. No matter how arrogant and overbearing they were in the outside world, once they were in the law enforcement hall, even if they were a dragon, they could only coil up, and even if they were a tiger, they could only lie down. The slightest bit of disrespect would cause them to die without a burial ground. Even Ma Jian didn't expect that Lin Yi would have the guts to make a move. Idiots to this extent were rare to find, even 1 in 10,000 people. However, this was good. Lin Yi's reaction was simply a confession. He didn't even need to use the soul-searching technique to sentence himself to death. The enforcer next to Ma Jian snorted disdainfully and reached out to grab Lin Yi. A mere newcomer of the Blue Cloud Pavilion who doesn't even amount to a fart dares to make a move in the law enforcement hall. Who do you think you are? Any outsider who dared to make a move in the law enforcement hall, no matter what their identity was, would be killed without mercy. This was Ram Jia's original words. Even if they directly killed Lin Yi here, they wouldn't have to bear any responsibility and would even be rewarded. In terms of strength, this enforcer and Ma Jian were both in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage, so they couldn't be considered weak. However, before he could even touch a hair on Lin Yi, his stomach was kicked without warning. His whole body was kicked several feet away and fiercely smashed into the iron wall. He couldn't get up for a long time. I'm indeed not much, but it's best for unrelated people not to come out and get in the way. Otherwise, if I attack too heavily, I might accidentally kill you. Lin Yi glanced at him coldly. Ma Jian's heart suddenly palpitated when he saw this. Although he had already seen Lin Yi's strength in the newcomer assessment, now he had to watch helplessly as his accomplice was defeated in one move. This was a bit too exaggerated. Humph, you talk big. I was just careless and let you sneak attack me. Do you think we, the enforcers, are vegetarian? Since you dare to make a move in the law enforcement hall, let's see how you die today. Ma Jian pretended to be tough on the surface, but in reality, he was a coward on the inside. As he spoke, one of his hands secretly reached for the secret bell under the table. His strength was not much stronger than that of his fallen companions, but he knew that he was no match for Lin Yi. However, this did not matter. After all, this was the law enforcement hall, where there were countless experts. As long as the secret bell rang, no matter how capable Lin Yi was, he could only obediently wait to be captured. Little did he know that his little trick, which he thought was clever, could not escape Lin Yi's eyes. Before he could touch the hidden bell, Lin Yi had already flashed behind him and grabbed his arm, not giving him a chance to succeed. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Hurry up and let go of me. Otherwise, as long as I call for help, you will definitely die. Ma Jian immediately felt the immense force from Lin Yi's hand. Even a middle-stage foundation establishment expert was still human. Not only was he afraid of death, he was also afraid of pain. Ma Jian's words were not false. Unfortunately, this was a specialized interrogation room. As long as the door was closed, no matter how he shouted for help, it would be a waste of effort. Moreover, if other people really saw this scene. If he was restrained by a mere Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer, he would lose a lot of face. Okay. Lin Yi nodded his head indifferently and cooperatively let go of his opponent's arm. However, before Ma Jian could breathe a sigh of relief, the hand that Lin Yi had just let go of immediately grabbed his neck. Like a duck being grabbed by the neck, Ma Jian could not breathe. His face turned red and his eyes rolled back. This way, you should not have the strength to call for help, right? Lin Yi's eyes were piercingly cold. Looking at his expression, it seemed that he really wanted to start a massacre here. Ma Jian was choked to the point where he could not breathe. His heart was suddenly filled with infinite fear. Just now, even though he clearly saw that Lin Yi was about to make a move, he could not help but hope that Lin Yi would not be stupid enough to really start a massacre here. Otherwise, with his strength, even if he really was not a match for Lin Yi, he would not be so easily restrained. Watching helplessly as Ma Jian, a dignified middle-stage foundation establishment expert, was about to lose his life in the hands of Lin Yi, the other law enforcer at the scene finally leaned against the iron wall and struggled to get up. He said with difficulty, "Wait, don't kill him. Killing him will at most vent your anger. It won't do you any good at all. Why seek your own death?" Lin Yi glanced at him, then suddenly grinned and said slowly, "You want me to spare his life? That's fine too. If you help me do something, I can temporarily spare his dog life." "What is it?" This law enforcer's name was Niu Chang. He had been close friends with Ma Jian since childhood and could be considered as a brother who wore the same pants. At a time like this, he naturally could not leave Ma Jian to die. "Don't be nervous, it's just a small matter. It won't make things difficult for you." Lin Yi was not flustered at all. With a calm expression, he said, "Help me find a person who is also a Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer like me. His name is Xiao Ran. Tell him that I am in trouble here and ask him to find someone to help me. But in order to prove that you are going, ask him to write me a note and bring it back." "That's simple." Niu Chang frowned in disbelief. It was not difficult to understand why Lin Yi wanted to find someone to help him. But to find a mere Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer, wasn't this too child's play? In any case, Lin Yi had openly made a move in the law enforcement hall. This was already an obvious fact, and it was something that could not be avoided. Such a crime was much more serious than killing Meng Jueguang. It must be known that there had never been a precedent of people who had done the same thing in the past being able to walk out of the law enforcement hall alive. From his point of view, Lin Yi's action was more or less grasping at the last straw of hope. Under Gong Yangjie's command, the enforcement hall had always been a one-man show of authority. Asking for help from an ordinary person was useless, unless it was one of the three big pavilion's lords. Unfortunately, for a mere Clear Cloud Pavilion newcomer to know one of the three big pavilion's lords, was this realistic? It's that simple. Lin Yi looked confident. From the moment he chose to make a move, he had already formulated this plan in his heart. After all, he was not a brainless person. If he did not have a backup plan, how could he rashly make a move in such a place? As for whether this method would work or not, he could only wait and see. Who said that a mere Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer like him could not ask for the help of a top big shot? Chapter 3960. Don't let anyone in the law enforcement hall know about the situation here. Otherwise, you should be very clear about the consequences. Lin Yi warned, as long as there are any abnormal movements, I will kill him. At most, I will perish together with him. Anyway, I won't be able to live anymore. You know. Don't doubt that I can kill him before I die. Promise him first. Ma Jian shouted himself hoarse and panted, don't talk nonsense when you go out. Ma Jian wasn't stupid. This matter was caused by him. If Niu Chang went out and reported it to Ram Jia, then Lin Yi would definitely die, but Ma Jian wouldn't be able to live either. Even if he wasn't killed by Lin Yi, Ram Jia wouldn't let him go. He didn't report this matter and did it in private to flatter Su Lingchong. Ram Jia protected his subordinates, but if you were to mess around in private without any rules to speak of, then the law enforcement hall would be in a mess. If Lin Yi was killed, with Su Lingchong's help, the matter could probably be suppressed. But if it was exposed now, it would be strange if Ram Jia didn't punish him for killing his subordinates. Therefore, he was more nervous about Niu Chang's method than Lin Yi. Okay, I promise you. Niu Chang nodded and turned to leave. If Lin Yi's request was too excessive, he might have other thoughts. But if it was just a small matter like running errands for someone, and he knew that the other party was doing useless work, there was no need for him to take this risk. Of course, if that Xiao Ran really had a way, it would be a confrontation with someone of Su Lingchong's level. It had nothing to do with him, so there was no need to risk Ma Jian's life. After Niu Chang left, Lin Yi still held Ma Jian's neck with one hand. No matter what, this was a mid-stage Foundation establishment realm expert. Moreover, they were in the opponent's territory. If he relaxed even a little and the opponent broke free, he might be consigned to eternal damnation. However, Lin Yi still left him with a breath. After all, if he accidentally killed this guy, even if he really found someone to help him, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed. It's useless. It doesn't matter who you find. Our law enforcement hall never gives face to anyone. I advise you to kowtow and admit your mistake as soon as possible. Maybe I can spare your little life. Ma Jian didn't believe that the newcomer could save Lin Yi. In the end, if it was useless, then he would still have to pinch him to death. Therefore, while threatening him, he also talked about the pros and cons. Since Lin Yi didn't have the resolve to fight to the death, then there was no need for him to be afraid. Lin Yi still couldn't escape from the palm of his hand. Sooner or later, he would be crushed to death in his hands as easily as crushing an ant. Bang! Before Ma Jian could finish speaking, Lin Yi raised his hand and punched him in the stomach. Before you speak, I advise you to take a good look at your situation first. I really don't have a good personality. If I accidentally caused the death of a law enforcer like you, I would really feel sorry. Under the pain, Ma Jian's body suddenly arched like a dead shrimp. However, because his neck was grabbed by Lin Yi, he couldn't even cry out in pain. There was only a strange intermittent burp left in the interrogation room. He didn't suffocate to death because of this. One couldn't help but praise Ma Jian for his great life. After half an hour, the iron door of the interrogation room finally opened, and the first person who popped her head in was not out of Lin Yi's expectations. It was Shangguan Laner. Little junior brother, so you're really here. After seeing Lin Yi, Shangguan Laner looked happy. She jumped over and checked him up and down. How is it? How is it? Did these bastards bully you? Did they torture you or anything? Little senior sister will help you vent your anger. When Ma Jian saw this scene, he was so shocked that he almost fainted on the spot. As one of Su Lingchong's people, he certainly recognized Shangguan Laner, the first miss of Soaring Sky Pavilion. Previously, when he was an examiner for the newcomer assessment, he had seen her twice. At that time, this miss was obviously disdainful of Lin Yi. How did it suddenly become like this? Following closely behind Shanghai Laner was Niu Chang, who also looked like he had seen a ghost. The other person was Xiao Ran, whom Lin Yi had asked him to find. Looking at his footsteps, he seemed to have suffered some injuries. It's been hard on you. Are your injuries serious? Lin Yi nodded at Xiao Ran. He asked Niu Chang to find Xiao Ran for this purpose. Back then, Xiao Ran had seen the little curly bear deliver a letter to him. In other words, the relationship between him and Shanghai Laner, apart from Murong Zhen and Li Jingming, who he had met at the back mountain, was only known to Xiao Ran among the people around him. The reason why he specifically asked Niu Chang to find Xiao Ran instead of his senior brother and the others was because of this consideration. The facts also proved that there was indeed such a tacit understanding between him and Xiao Ran. In this situation, only Shanghai Laner, the first miss, could help him out. I'm fine. Xiao Ran smiled. Normally, as a newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion, he could not enter the core area of Soaring Pavilion at all, let alone find the first Mississippi. Therefore, he could only find an opportunity to sneak in. Fortunately, he was lucky enough to meet Shanghai Laner. It was already very lucky that he only suffered such minor injuries. While talking, Shanghai Laner had already checked Lin Yi from head to toe. When she found that he was not injured, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. She pretended to be fierce at Ma Jian and said, "Fortunately, little junior brother is fine. Otherwise, I will go find that grim-faced ghost and let him punish you personally." Ma Jian was shocked. The grim-faced ghost that Shanghai Laner mentioned was the immediate superior of their law enforcement hall, Ram Jie. If it was someone else who said these words, he could still treat it as an alarmist and ignore it. This was because everyone knew of Gong Yangjie's arrogance. He was a strong person who did not even place the higher-ups of the three great pavilions in his eyes. The words of these people, in his ears, were not even worth a fart. However, the first Miss Shangguan in front of him was not one of them. She was not a higher-up of the three great pavilions, nor did she have any power. However, her grandfather, Shanghai Tianhua, the powerful pavilion master of Soaring Pavilion, was the only one in the three great pavilions who could tame Ram Jie. Even 1,000 Li horse needed a talent scout. The reason why Gong Yangjie was able to reach his current level was because of Shangguan Tianhua's appreciation of him. He wasn't Shangguan Tianhua's personal disciple, but he had been just a single step away from becoming one. It was not that Shanghai Tianhua looked down on him, but Shanghai Tianhua once said, "Ram Jie is the only genius I have seen in my life. No one can really teach him, except for himself." This sort of evaluation was the reason why Ram Jie had been able to roam the three great pavilions so arrogantly all these years. No one dared to point fingers at him, and he could ignore any of the so-called elders of the three great pavilions. The only exception was Shangguan Tianhua. Shanghai Laner was the only granddaughter that Shanghai Tianhua doted on. If she really wanted to find Ram Jie would definitely not make things difficult for her because of such a small matter. Moreover, this matter itself was Ma Jian who harbored evil intentions. He was instructed by Su Lingchong to avenge a personal grudge. If this was found out by Ram Jia, he would not even know how to write the word death. Greetings, Miss Shangguan. Ma Jian stammered as he bowed. Even if he disregarded his relationship with Ram Jia, the other party was still the first miss of Soaring Pavilion. She was not someone that a mere law enforcement officer like him could afford to offend. Chapter 3961. All right then, this guy didn't differentiate right from wrong and tried to search my soul. I'll have to ask little senior sister to help me get back at him. Lin Yi said without hesitation. Damn. Ma Jian was so scared that he peed his pants. If the soul-searching technique was used once, he would become a fool or a cripple. If it was used 100 times or 1,000 times more, not to mention his divine sense, even his brain would be squeezed dry. Soul-searching skill? You actually want to use the soul-searching skill on junior brother? Shanghai Laner was stunned, and then she looked at Ma Jian with an extremely unfriendly gaze. With her family background, even if she didn't like to practice, she had heard of the soul-searching skill. She was clear about the side effects of this divine skill. After saying this, Shanghai Laner didn't say anything. She turned around angrily and walked out of the interrogation room, leaving everyone in the room looking at each other. Time passed by bit by bit. Lin Yi and Xiao Ran sat aside calmly. Anyway, Shanghai Laner, the young lady, had already come forward. They didn't have to worry about the other party's tricks at all. On the contrary, Ma Jian and Niu Chang were restless at the moment, especially Ma Jian, the mastermind, who was sweating profusely and panicking. After 30 minutes, Shanghai Laner came back. As she pushed the door and entered, she muttered to herself with dissatisfaction, "Cold-faced ghost is really unreasonable. He doesn't even want to come out to see me. He's so hateful." Hearing these words, Ma Jian immediately heaved a sigh of relief. It was fortunate that Hallmaster Gong Yangjia had a cold temperament and never paid attention to anyone. Otherwise, if this young miss really reported this to him, even if he was lucky enough not to die this time, it would be hard for him to escape punishment. However, before he had time to rejoice, he saw the two black curtain experts who followed Shanghai Laner in. His scalp immediately went numb. He felt dizzy and almost fainted on the spot. From their attire, it could be seen that these two people were different from other ordinary law enforcers. They were known as the Black Curtain Law Enforcers, and they specialized in targeting the members of the Law Enforcement Hall. If the members of the Law Enforcement Hall gave themselves away, they would suffer a fate worse than death. Ma Jian, you're suspected of abusing your authority to take revenge. Come with us. One of the Black Curtain Law Enforcers said. Then, without giving Ma Jian any chance to speak, he took a step forward and the steel chain in his hand whizzed out. Before Ma Jian could react, he was already tightly locked by the fine steel chains. His joints were pierced by the special hooks on the steel chains. Every part of his body was so deep that his bones could be seen. Ma Jian didn't even have the chance to struggle. With a miserable howl, he fell to the ground. Every time he struggled, he would feel excruciating pain. He could only howl miserably as the Black Curtain Law Enforcers dragged him like a dead dog. He was dragged away in front of everyone. Lin Yi and Xiao Ran's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. The Law Enforcement Hall was indeed a notoriously vicious place. Their cruel methods were truly outrageous. It was better not to come here in the future. When he was about to be dragged to the door, Ma Jian gritted his teeth and struggled to turn his head to look at Shanghai Laner and Lin Yi. He said unwillingly, You didn't see the hall master. How did this happen? Shanghai Laner stuck out her tongue. She shrugged like Lin Yi did in the past and said, I didn't see that cold-faced ghost, but these two guys said that they received orders from cold-faced ghost to settle this matter for me. So, I brought them here. After hearing this, Ma Jian rolled his eyes and passed out on the spot. Then, he was really like a dead dog. He couldn't even make a sound as he was dragged away by the Black Curtain Law Enforcers. As for what would happen to him in the end, no one knew. Anyway, he would definitely be miserable if he fell into the hands of the Black Curtain law enforcers. Looking at this scene, Lin Yi was secretly shocked. Ram Jia was indeed a famous and powerful figure. Nothing that happened in the law enforcement hall could escape his eyes and ears. The only difference was whether he wanted to ask about it or not. He had no choice but to rejoice. Fortunately, his reaction had been fast enough, and he had thought of asking Shangguan Lan for help. Otherwise, if the soul-searching technique had really been used on him, and all his secrets had fallen into Gong Yangjia's eyes, he would never be able to leave the law enforcement hall. Okay, I've vented my anger. This place is so dark and smelly. Let's leave this place quickly. Shanghai Laner frowned and covered her nose. If it weren't for saving Lin Yi, she wouldn't be willing to come to the law enforcement hall. The three of them immediately left the law enforcement hall. Shanghai Laner immediately separated from Lin Yi because she had something to deal with at home. Before leaving, she said, "It's my birthday in a few days. Junior brother, don't forget to come." After saying that, she didn't give Lin Yi a chance to speak. She waved her hand and skipped away. Birthday? Lin Yi shook his head with a bitter smile. He had heard this news a long time ago. At that time, Meng Jueguang used the excuse of preparing a birthday gift for someone to exchange waste jade for good jade. However, he didn't expect that it was prepared for his senior sister. With the friendship between Lin Yi and Shanghai Laner, such an important day couldn't be neglected. Not to mention that the other party had helped him a lot today. He had to take the opportunity to thank her. However, with Shanghai Laner's identity as the First Lady of Soaring Sky Pavilion, whether she was willing or not, there would inevitably be a grand birthday party. At that time, with the identity of a newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion, whether or not Lin Yi could get the admission was a big problem. After all, this was basically equivalent to a high-level banquet of the three pavilions. Ordinary people couldn't enter this circle at all. For the arrival of a newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion like him, Shanghai Laner was of course very happy, but others might not think so. Forget it, if it really doesn't work, I can only bite the bullet and go. Anyway, there's no need to stay for too long. It's good to send my regards. Lin Yi had to make such a decision. Fortunately, he didn't care much about his face. Even if he was criticized by others, he wouldn't take it to heart. With the return of Lin Yi and Xiao Ran to the welcome pavilion, it meant that the mine collapse storm had finally come to an end. Many newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion who remained on the sidelines or were hoping for a fluke must adjust their mentality and prepare to welcome the arrival of a new era. The era of Meng Jueguang had come to an end. In any case, the sudden death of Meng Jueguang had brought a huge power vacuum to the welcome pavilion. The competition between various forces had just begun. Chapter 3962. Because of Meng Jueguang's love letter, this miss obviously hated Lin Yi to death. Why did she suddenly show up and take the initiative to save Lin Yi? The death of Meng Jueguang was a big blow to Su Lingchong. Now because of Lin Yi, not only did he lose Ma Jian, but he also suddenly found that Miss Shangguan's attitude began to become unclear with Lin Yi. Such continuous blows, even young Master Su could not help but be a little confused. Shangguan Laner had always been young Master Su's exclusive property. No one could touch her. Anyone who had a little evil intention would immediately be killed. As for Lin Yi, a new bumpkin from the secular world, the gap between him and Miss Shangguan was basically the gap between a toad and a swan. He thought that this kind of thing could not pose any threat to him, but he did not expect that the most impossible thing to happen now inexplicably showed a trace of bad signs. This was related to his future plan, and even related to the future strategy of the Su family for the next 100 years. He could not afford to take it lightly. Su Lingchong suddenly panicked. Even the important matter of competing with the South Sky Gate for the position of the steward of the sky-reaching pavilion was temporarily put aside and mobilized people to investigate it. He must find out as soon as possible what had happened between Shangguan Laner and Lin Yi during this period. After all, Su Lingchong was the young master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. If he really wanted to know something, it would be a piece of cake. There were very few things in the three great pavilions that could escape his eyes and ears. In the short span of a day, the truth had already come to light. As expected, the information came from Kang Mingming. Although Su Lingchong also wanted to start the investigation from Shangguan Laner, this Mrs. level was too high. Unless he did it himself, others could not even say a word. There was no way to find out what this miss had done before. It was easier said than done to find clues from her. Besides, who dared to investigate her? They were all people who were protected by the North Island elders. Even Ram Jie did not dare to investigate them. Therefore, in the end, Su Lingchong could only pin his hopes on Lin Yi. Even though Meng Jueguang was dead and his control over the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion was greatly weakened, it was still much easier than directly investigating Shanghai Laner. Even without Meng Jueguang, Su Lingchong still had a lot of people he could use in the welcoming pavilion. From the pavilion master Hu Yunfeng to Kang Mingming and Zhong Pingliang. They were all his subordinates. However, after much consideration, the task still fell to Kang Mingming. After all, Hu Yunfeng was the pavilion master of the welcome pavilion. If she came out to investigate this kind of thing, it would be easy for others to get hold of her. It was not as convenient as Kang Mingming. After receiving Su Lingchong's letter, Kang Mingming did not feel it was troublesome. Instead, he was overjoyed. Now, because of the sudden death of Meng Jueguang, the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion were completely in a state of disunity. It was the easiest time to be taken advantage of. His identity as a newcomer deacon might not have much of a deterrent effect, but if he had Su Lingchong's young master aura, that would be a big difference. After a group of newcomers of Soaring Pavilion clarified their backing background, they had already begun to move, intending to replace him. This was a cross-pavilion challenge. After he was crushed by Lin Yi in an almost humiliating way, his performance was particularly obvious, and it could even be said that he did not hide it. Kang Mingming was very clear. Even if he had Su Lingchong, the young master, behind him, it was no longer as easy as it was at the beginning to suppress the newcomers of Soaring Pavilion. After all, they had found their own strong backing. Just like Shi Yuda, they did not need to be afraid of him anymore. Since he could not suppress the newcomers of Soaring Pavilion, Kang Mingming could only settle for second best and think of ways to recruit subordinates from other places. Originally, because of Meng Jueguang, no matter how eager he was, he could not stretch his hands into Blue Cloud Pavilion. After all, Meng Jueguang was also Su Lingchong's subordinate. Wouldn't that be internal strife? But now, the situation was different. In his eyes, the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion were like a piece of juicy meat, waiting for him to take a bite. Su Lingchong's order came at the right time. With that thought in mind, Kang Mingming went straight to the newcomer's cave abode in Blue Cloud Pavilion. He had a clear goal, which was to directly knock on the door and enter Murongzhen's wooden house. If he wanted to successfully take over Meng Jueguang's subordinates, he had to first subdue his two subordinates. One was Meng Tong, and the other was Murongzhen. As for Lin Yi, he did not even need to think about it. Now that Meng Tong was still seriously injured and was recuperating in seclusion, Kang Mingming's first target naturally became Murongzhen. Deacon Kang, it's my honor to have you visit my wooden house in person. Murongzhen purposely pretended to be a graceful lady in front of Kang Mingming. She smiled faintly, which was mesmerizing. As expected, her alluring beauty made Kang Mingming drool. He almost drooled, which made him look like a lecher. He had been at Heaven Stage Island for half a year, but he did not know what a woman was. Normal people really could not resist the temptation of a beauty like Murongzhen. This was especially true for Kang Mingming. When he was in the secular world, he could only stay with the ugly 11th, who was covered in scars, because of the Xianqian patriarch's power. He dared not touch other women. Fortunately, after being dazzled for a long time, Kang Mingming finally remembered the purpose of his visit. He forced himself to calm down and said, "Lady Murong, I'm here to ask you something. If you know anything, please enlighten me." "Please go ahead, Deacon Kang. I'll definitely tell you everything I know." Murongzhen bowed gracefully. This woman had always been used to it. Moreover, she was in her own wooden house, so she was wearing very little. Kang Mingming could not help but feel his heart heat up again. Kang Mingming licked his lips because his mouth was dry. He then said, "Lady Murong, you live in this wooden house. You should know what Lin Yi does every day and who he interacts with. So, do you know what happened between Lin Yi and Lady Shangguan?" "Lady Shangguan?" Murongzhen narrowed her eyes. There was only one person who could be called Lady Shangguan in the three great pavilions. Naturally, it was Shanghai Laner. For a moment, Murongzhen could not help but hesitate. Kang Mingming had asked the right person. Of course, she knew what happened between Lin Yi and Shanghai Laner. However, it was not convenient for her to tell Kang Mingming about what happened at the Half Moon Lake at the back of the mountain. Chapter 3963. Back then, she had merely said something about Shanghai Laner, and she was trampled from the sky to the ground. She was banished to a new bee in Blue Cloud Pavilion. If the incident at the Half Moon Lake at the back of the mountain was exposed, she would be dismembered by Su Lingchong's men. "Why? Is there something you don't want to tell me, Lady Murong?" Kang Xiaoming was a sharp thinker. One look at Murongzhen's face and he knew that there was more to it than meets the eye. If it was someone else, they wouldn't have known who Miss Shangguan was, but Murongzhen was from Chongtian Pavilion. There was no way he didn't know. Murongzhen was shocked. She quickly forced a smile and tried to smooth things over. "You misunderstood me, Officer Kang. I was just trying to recall if I've seen something like this before." "Oh. Does Miss Murong remember anything?" Kang Xiaoming continued to greedily size up the woman's alluring body as he asked calmly. "To tell you the truth, Steward Kang, I just remembered something. Back then, when I was taking part in the spiritual beast assessment at the back of the mountain, I happened to see Lady Shangguan appearing at the back of the mountain out of nowhere. She was alone too. She was attacked by the spiritual beast at that time, but Lin Yi showed up and saved her," Murongzhen said half-truthfully. This was the most beneficial thing for her. Not only could she remove herself from the matter, but she could also use the ambiguous relationship between Lin Yi and Shanghai Laner to add fuel to the fire between Su Lingchong and Lin Yi. No matter which one of them was at a disadvantage, it would not be a bad thing for her. Apart from that, she could also curry favor with Kang Mingming by revealing this matter. After all, Meng Jueguang was dead. Facing Lin Yi, who was getting more powerful by the day, she could not fight him alone. She had to find external help as soon as possible, and Kang Mingming was the perfect candidate. Firstly, although Kang Xiaoming's strength wasn't strong, he had Su Lingchong as his backer. Furthermore, he was an alchemist. His purpose wasn't to charge and break through enemy lines, so he didn't need to place too much emphasis on strength. Moreover, there was a blood feud between him and Lin Yi in the secular world. The enemy of the enemy was a natural ally. In Murongzhen's eyes, if she made good use of Kang Mingming, her role would not be any less than that of Meng Jueguang. Not only could she use him to deal with Lin Yi, but if the opportunity was right, she could even use him to climb up to Su Lingchong again. That would be the day she could make a name for herself. Lin Yi saved Lady Shangguan's life? This guy is so lucky. Kang Mingming was shocked and he could not help but feel envious. To be able to save Miss Shangguan's life was a blessing that couldn't be reaped even in a few lifetimes. If he used such a huge favor well, he would be able to achieve meteoric success in the future. Why didn't he, Kang Xiaoming, have such a good opportunity? That's right. I heard people say that Lady Shangguan hated Lin Yi. Now that she has such an opportunity, he might be able to turn over a new leaf and become a phoenix. Murongzhen added fuel to the fire. Him. Fly up the branches and transform into a phoenix. Dream on. Kang Ming was so angry that he gritted his teeth. However, he would not be fooled so easily. He asked in confusion, since Lady Murong happened to be there, why didn't you help him? It's better to do Lady Shangguan a favor than to let Lin Yi have all the glory, right? Murong Zhen paused for a while, then she pretended to be weak and said, I am no match for Lin Yi. If I showed up at that time, I'm afraid he would kill me. I see. Kang Ming looked at her suspiciously, but he did not continue to ask. This answer was enough to give Su Lingchong an explanation. Next, it was his own business. It depended on whether Murong Zhen was sensible. If she was sensible, she would come to him obediently, and there would be nothing to say. Otherwise, when Kang Ming reported, he would naturally add oil to the fire and let Murong Zhen appear at the scene to see how she would die. It had to be said that Kang Ming was quite a sinister person. He thought of a way to threaten Murong Zhen in an instant. However, before Kang Xiaoming could speak, Murong Zhen tactfully took the initiative and said, It's already dark. If Deacon Kang doesn't mind, why don't you stay in my wooden house for the night? Kang Ming's eyes suddenly lit up. He rubbed his hands eagerly, but he pretended to be reserved and said, Lady Murong, we are a man and a woman alone. Is this appropriate? What's wrong with that? It's my honor that Deacon Kang is willing to do me this favor. Murong Zhen said with her charming eyes. She stretched her hands to her waist and slowly untied her belt. Murong Zhen knew very well that with her strength at the peak of the early stage of the building foundation realm, she could only intimidate ordinary newcomers. Her body was her biggest asset. Just like how she won over Meng Jueguang, if she wanted to hook up with Kang Ming, going to bed with him was not only unavoidable, but it was also the most important first step. Only when it was on the bed, men were most likely to relax and let down their guard. When the pillow wind blew, any request would be easy. That was the so-called lust makes one lose his mind. Leaving aside the fact that Kang Ming and Murong Zhen were in cahoots, after a night of pleasure, a letter was finally sent to Su Lingchong's hands. I see. Su Lingchong read it carefully and he finally understood. Young Master Su had chased after Shangguan Laner for so many years, so he knew this young lady's temperament like the back of his hand. Although she had the temperament of a young lady, she was a person who would repay favors. If Lin Yi really did save her life, then no matter how much she hated Lin Yi, she would definitely help him if he needed her help at a critical moment. This could explain why she went to the law enforcement hall to help Lin Yi out of trouble. However, although he thought this way, young Master Su was still a little worried. What was Shangguan Lan's attitude towards Lin Yi? He had to ask her face to face. After all, the common scene of a hero saving a damsel in distress was too common. Even if the young lady didn't like the poor guy at first, it was not impossible for her to change her attitude and fall in love with the poor guy after he saved her life. Su Lingchong had to be careful. Well. Faced with Su Lingchong's question, Shangguan Lan tilted her head, and suddenly said with a smile, as you said, I don't want to owe him a favor, so I naturally have to help him. Is there anything else? Su Lingchong asked. Chapter 3964. No, I just want to show my concern. That brat Lin Yi is a good for nothing. This is something that is obvious to all in the welcome pavilion. I'm just afraid that junior sister Lan will be deceived by him and be sad at that time. Su Lingchong hurriedly smiled apologetically. If that's the case, then you can rest assured. This young lady's eyesight is very good, and I won't be easily deceived by some people. Shanghai Laner raised the corner of her mouth and said. She deliberately spoke very vaguely, but when it fell into Su Lingchong's ears, the meaning was quite clear. That was, this young lady's eyesight was very high, and it was impossible for her to be deceived by a poor newcomer like Lin Yi. Little did he know that this was only Su Lingchong's own wishful thinking. In the heart of Shanghai Laner, the meaning was completely opposite. Some people, in her words, were actually referring to him, young Master Su. That's good, that's good. Su Lingchong could be said to be closely involved in the situation. If the other party was changed to someone else, he probably would have noticed that something was wrong. Unfortunately, the person in front of him was Lan Er. In front of the goddess that men yearn for, their intelligence would always be in the negative, and young Master Su was no exception. This guy is really a big idiot. Shanghai Laner secretly laughed. She was happy to let this idiot Su Lingchong misunderstand by himself. The relationship between her and Lin Yi was a secret between her and Lin Yi, and she didn't want this annoying Su Lingchong to know. Oh, that's right, junior sister Lan Er. It has been decided that I will host your birthday banquet for you. If you have any ideas or requests, feel free to tell me. No matter what kind of wish it is, I will definitely do my best to help you realize it. Su Lingchong said with an excited face. Being able to host Shanghai Laner's birthday banquet meant that he had already obtained the preliminary approval of Shanghai Tianhua, or at least it was already tacit approval. This was the first step to becoming the son-in-law of Shanghai Tianhua, and to Su Lingchong, its significance wasn't the slightest bit inferior to fighting for the position of manager of the Skysoar Pavilion. With this opportunity, not only could he stabilize his relationship with Shangguan Laner, but he could also further improve his position in the three great pavilions. One had to know that this was a banquet for the upper echelons of the three great pavilions. Being the host of this banquet meant that one could directly communicate with all the upper echelons of the three great pavilions. There was no need to go into detail about the benefits. Unexpectedly, Shanghai Laner, the protagonist of the birthday party, was not interested in this. She waved her hand and said, "Do whatever you want. Anyway, it will not be the birthday party that I want. In the end, it will only become a power trade fair for you. I am not interested." A long time ago, Shanghai Laner still had all kinds of expectations and fantasies about the rare birthday party. But gradually, she found that it was completely different from what she had imagined. In the end, this was just a networking event held by the upper echelons of the three great pavilions in the name of her birthday party. As for whether she, the protagonist, was there or not, it didn't matter at all. If one had to talk about expectations, it was her only expectation for this birthday party. It could only be on Lin Yi. At that time, it was estimated that only this little junior brother would sincerely celebrate her birthday. Sure enough, she still had the temperament of a little girl. Seeing this, Su Lingchong smiled indifferently. Whether Shanghai Laner was happy or not, it was not important to him. The only important thing was that this time was an excellent opportunity for him to show his ability in front of all the upper echelons of the three great pavilions. He must not easily waste it. That Lin Yi. Do you want to let him attend this birthday party? Su Lingchong suddenly suggested. Huh? Shanghai Laner was slightly taken aback. She was very clear that her little junior brother Lin Yi was a thorn in Su Lingchong's side. Would this guy be so kind as to take the initiative to invite Lin Yi to attend her birthday party? Junior sister Lan Er, didn't you say that you want to return his favor? Originally, a low-level newcomer with no status like him is not qualified to attend such a high-class banquet. If you give him this opportunity, coupled with the help you gave him before, the so-called favor should be cleared, right? Su Lingchong explained with a sinister smile. Of course, this was not his real intention, but a flash of inspiration in his mind. He suddenly thought of a brilliant idea to deal with Lin Yi. No matter how tyrannical and abnormal Lin Yi's strength was, in the end, he was just a newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion. He could not be seen in public at all. If he invited Lin Yi to the birthday party where the upper echelons of the three great pavilions gathered, then let him make a fool of himself in front of all the upper echelons of the three great pavilions and take the opportunity to humiliate him. Wouldn't it be killing two birds with one stone to let Shanghai Laner see this guy's humble and embarrassing true face? Moreover, once Lin Yi left a negative impression in the eyes of the upper echelons of the three great pavilions, then even if he entered the inner sect in the future, there would be no future to speak of. Well, let's do it this way. Shanghai Laner immediately agreed readily. She was too lazy to guess what despicable intentions Su Lingchong had. Anyway, Lin Yi would definitely be able to solve it when the time came. Moreover, at the very least, there was still her, the main character of the birthday party, so it was impossible for Lin Yi to suffer a big loss. Okay. Su Lingchong smiled sinisterly and thought to himself, then wait to watch a good show. On the other hand, several days had passed since the death of Meng Jueguang, and the power struggle within the Welcome Pavilion had finally begun to take shape. Currently, the position that received the most attention in the Welcome Pavilion was the position of the third Pavilion Master. This important position originally belonged to Meng Jueguang, but because of Meng Jueguang's death, it suddenly became empty. Some people once thought that the former third Pavilion Master, Lu Bianren, might have a chance to make a comeback. After all, he was forced to leave by Meng Jueguang. Now that Meng Jueguang was no longer around, and the new members of the Blue Cloud Pavilion were in a state of panic, it was not impossible for the upper echelons to transfer the former third Pavilion Master back to stabilize the situation. However, today, an appointment came from within the Blue Cloud Pavilion, which made everyone's eyes pop out. Lu Bianren, the former third Pavilion Master who was forced to leave by Meng Jueguang, was now promoted to the position of the second senior brother in charge of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. This appointment was really beyond everyone's expectations. Even senior brother Ku Bai and Lin Yi, who were in the same faction as Lu Bianren, were so shocked that their teeth almost fell off when they heard it. The position of the second senior brother in charge of the Blue Cloud Pavilion in Blue Cloud Pavilion was the same position that Su Lingchong currently held in Soaring Sky Pavilion. Strictly speaking, it belonged to the same level as the third Pavilion Master of the Welcome Pavilion. Therefore, this change in Lu Bianren's position could be considered as a flat transfer. Chapter 3965. However, before this, Lu Bianren didn't have any foundation in Blue Cloud Pavilion. Even if he became the second senior brother supervisor of Blue Cloud Pavilion, it was still unknown how effective his authority would be. Perhaps in the end, he would end up in the same situation as when he was in the Welcoming Pavilion, where he would be taken over by others. Not to mention Lu Bianren's future prospects, he was already the second senior brother supervisor of Blue Cloud Pavilion, so it was naturally impossible for him to return to the Welcoming Pavilion. Apart from him, there was no suitable candidate that could satisfy all parties. As a result, the position of the third Pavilion Master of Welcome Pavilion was temporarily vacant. In addition, the other position left by Meng Jueguang's death, the eldest senior brother supervisor of Blue Cloud Pavilion, was finally revealed, and the successor was senior brother Bitter. There was no doubt about this. Senior brother Bitter had been the second senior brother supervisor of Blue Cloud Pavilion for many years under Meng Jueguang. He had enough experience, and now that he had broken through to the peak of the early stage of foundation establishment, his strength was also sufficient. More importantly, among the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion, Lin Yi's group was undoubtedly the strongest. This was something that no one could stop. Anyone who wanted to sit in this position had to get Lin Yi's approval. To be able to get Lin Yi's approval, this person could only be senior brother Bitter. The higher-ups wouldn't have too many thoughts about this kind of low-level position. Naturally, stability was the main priority. Senior brother Bitter's appointment was unusually smooth from beginning to end. However, as a result, senior brother Bitter's original position as the second senior brother supervisor of Blue Cloud Pavilion was once again vacant. Just like the third Pavilion Master position, it was left unfilled for a long time. If Lin Yi wanted to, this position would probably fall into his hands in a minute. Unfortunately, he didn't like this insignificant new manager at all. Even if it was delivered to his door, he wouldn't want it. If Lin Yi didn't want it, then Xiao Ran, Xiao Hongkai, and the other subordinates of his were even more unwilling. After all, his underlings had unexpectedly become the senior brother supervisor. Was this reasonable? As for Meng Tong's group, they had some thoughts about it. Unfortunately, they didn't have the protection of Meng Jueguang, and it was a problem for them to protect themselves under the threat of Lin Yi. On the contrary, Murong Zhen was a little excited. She had just recently gotten close to Kang Xiaoming. "Senior brother Bitter, how's the situation?" Lin Yi asked as they gathered together once more. He was naturally asking about Ku Bai Shixiang's situation after he became the head senior brother of the newcomers. "Not bad. No matter how much they talk, it's better to fight." Moreover, he also wanted to see Li Jingming's true strength. Anyway, no matter who was injured, Lin Yi was confident that he could heal them. It would be a mutual exchange between them. Seeing that Lin Yi acquiesced, Xiao Hongkai immediately cheered and went to find Li Jingming. He never refused to fight. Not to mention that even though his hostility towards Li Jingming wasn't as irreconcilable as his hostility towards Meng Tong, he could still clearly remember the scene of him being defeated by Li Jingming with a single move during the newcomer trials in the rear mountains during the first month he'd arrived at the Welcome Pavilion. He'd always taken that defeat to heart. After successfully building his foundation and his strength was reborn, Xiao Hongkai thought that he would have a chance to fight against Li Jingming. However, he didn't expect that in the 2-month-long newcomer challenge, he would just brush past Li Jingming. Although he successfully stepped on Meng Tong in the end, he still missed out on fighting Li Jingming. But now, the opportunity had finally come. Lin Yi had already acquiesced, so him challenging Li Jingming was also a rare opportunity for the other party to show his strength and fight for status. Presumably, he wouldn't reject it. In fact, it was just as Xiao Hongkai had expected. Li Jingming only paused for a moment after hearing the challenge, and after exchanging a glance with Lin Yi, he agreed without hesitation. Chapter 3966. Unfortunately, Lin Yi didn't intend to do so. It wasn't that he was intentionally suppressing him, but on the contrary, he was actually protecting him. Although Meng Jueguang was already dead, his formidable opponents like Su Lingchong were still around. If they were to find out that Li Jingming was a mole from the beginning, Li Jingming would inevitably be pushed to the heart of the struggle and become a thorn in the side of Su Lingchong and the others. His situation would be extremely bad. Li Jingming was well aware of this, but he didn't have any complaints. Instead, he was secretly grateful towards Lin Yi's intentions. After all, this was in line with his usual low-key style of doing things. However, low-key didn't mean that he really didn't have to do anything. Only those with strength could be called low-key, those without strength were called cowards. If everyone came to step on you and bully you, then there would be endless trouble. Therefore, Li Jingming was very clear that if he wanted to keep a low profile, then he had to reveal his strength at the right time to deter others. Xiao Hongkai, as the publicly acknowledged #1 general under Lin Yi, was a suitable opponent for Li Jingming who intended to establish his might. According to the rules of the Welcome Pavilion, this battle didn't involve the use of weapons or the help of spiritual pets, and it was a pure collision of strength. Originally, Lin Yi expected that the strength of both sides should be about the same. If they were to really go all out and fight each other to the death, then it would probably end in a situation where both sides would suffer heavy losses. He was even prepared to immediately appear and stop it if anything went wrong. In reality, it was indeed as Lin Yi expected at the beginning. After a few rounds, Xiao Hongkai and Li Jingming were evenly matched, and no one fell into a disadvantageous position. The battle between the two was so exciting and intense that even a mid-stage foundation establishment expert like Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh in admiration when he saw it. These two people were born with innate combat talent, and they were destined to never be mediocre. Once the time came, they would be like gold that had been washed out of the yellow sand, revealing their extraordinary brilliance. Lin Yi had long known that Li Jingming had successfully built his foundation, so he was not surprised. However, the others present had never seen Li Jingming's true strength. They had always thought that Li Jingming was only a heaven stage great circle expert and could not withstand a single blow from Xiao Hongkai. But he didn't expect that Li Jingming's strength had actually reached such a level without making a sound. He was actually able to fight evenly with Xiao Hongkai, a valiant general, and they were locked in a stalemate. However, this situation of being evenly matched did not last long. Very soon, everyone realized that they had once again misjudged. Li Jingming's strength was not only on par with Xiao Hongcai's, but he was also a powerful existence that was above Xiao Hongcai. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, Li Jingming suddenly ended the battle without warning when Xiao Hongcai's cold iron palm was running out of strength with a perfect sky frost fist. Striking after the enemy, the timing is just right. Well done. Lin Yi praised sincerely, and then took the lead to applaud. Following that, senior brother Ku Bai, Xiao Ran, and the others also applauded in appreciation. In fact, even Xiao Hongcai himself couldn't help but applaud. He wholeheartedly accepted his defeat today. Li Jingming, you're really strong. You used to be under the hands of a dirty bird like Meng Jueguang. From today onwards, no matter what others think, Xiao Hongcai will treat you as my brother. Xiao Hongcai said sincerely. He was not stupid. He could clearly feel that Li Jingming had shown mercy to him. Otherwise, he would at least be seriously injured. It was impossible for him to stand there as if nothing had happened. What's more, Xiao Hongcai seemed to be careless at first glance, but he had his own way of judging people, which was to judge people by their fists and feet. A person's fighting style could, to a large extent, tell a person's character. This was something almost instinctive. It was different from talking with flowery words, which could not be faked. From the battle just now, he could clearly feel that although Li Jingming was very patient, when it came to a head-on confrontation, this person's courage was not inferior to anyone. It could be seen that Li Jingming was born with a strong arrogance. Such a person would not like to play tricks, and he was not someone that a mere Meng Jueguang could really subdue. It was impossible when he was alive, and it was even more impossible when he was dead. Otherwise, with Li Jingming's strength, he should have stood up and summoned the wind and rain, instead of being low-key and invisible. Thank you. Li Jingming nodded heavily. Xiao Hongcai's simple words actually made his nose sour, and a dignified man almost shed tears. After being a spy under Meng Jueguang for so long, because he was destined not to see the light, he had gradually begun to get used to being alone, used to facing everything around him alone. Now that he was suddenly recognized, this feeling of being suddenly accepted by the light was not something that ordinary people could understand. Others did not know the reason, but it was impossible for Lin Yi not to know. He immediately walked over and patted his shoulder gently, smiled warmly and said, "You've worked hard, welcome back." Hearing this, Li Jingming grinned. His smile was very unnatural, and it could even be said that his smile was very ugly. It was not that he had any thoughts in his mind, but it was a smile that came from the bottom of his heart. It was just that he had not smiled for a long time, and he had forgotten how to smile. Thinking back, in the half a year that he had been in the Welcome Pavilion, not only did he bear the heavy responsibility of being a spy for Lin Yi, but he also had to face all kinds of oppression from Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong every day. He could only endure and not resist, so naturally, he could not smile. Not to mention that the entire Clearwater Villa had been annihilated, and he was burdened with such a deep blood feud. Every day, as soon as he closed his eyes, he would see the insufferably formidable figure of his enemy in the depths of his mind, so how could he possibly smile? Your smile is really ugly. Looks like you have to practice more in the future. Otherwise, when you smile, you look like you're crying. That's too fucking scary. Xiao Hongcai did not know about these inside stories, so he immediately made a vicious comment. Li Jingming did not know whether to laugh or cry, but he felt a little warmth in his heart. It felt good to be brothers with such a simple-minded guy. At this time, Xiao Ran walked over and smiled at Li Jingming. "Brother Jingming, after a few days, when you're fully recovered, why don't you come and fight with me?" For a moment, everyone was silent. Xiao Hongcai was a fighter, so they had expected him to challenge Li Jingming. However, Xiao Ran was not that kind of person. Under normal circumstances, he would not easily fight. Previously, Xiao Hongcai had always wanted to fight with him, but he never agreed. Now, he actually took the initiative to challenge Li Jingming. Was it because he was eager to fight, or was there a deeper meaning behind it? Chapter 3967. Seeing that there seemed to be a smell of gunpowder between the two, Senior Brother Ku could not help but secretly pat Lin Yi and whispered worriedly, "Junior Brother Lin, aren't you going to come out and stop it?" He just joined us, and he was immediately challenged by Junior Brother Qiao and Junior Brother Xiao. I'm afraid that Li Jingming will have complaints in his heart. Complaints? They're not some shallow and boring people. You don't have to worry about them, Senior Brother Ku. Lin Yi smiled faintly, unconcerned. Regarding the people under his command, Lin Yi understood them far better than anyone else present. There were only two reasons why Xiao Ran did this. One was that it was rare to meet an expert of the same level, so it was inevitable that he would be excited. This was human nature, and even Xiao Ran was no exception. As for the other reason, it was something that even Lin Yi himself was quite interested in. Currently, most of the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion had already joined Lin Yi, but there were only 3 people who would be valued by Lin Yi and could possibly take on heavy responsibilities. One was Xiao Ran, the other was Qiao Hongkai, and the last possible candidate was Li Jingming, who had just joined Lin Yi's side. It was inevitable that these 3 people would compete with each other, and it could also be said that it was something that was inevitable. Now that Li Jingming had defeated Qiao Hongkai, then in the battle between him and Xiao Ran, no matter which side won, they would be able to lock the position of the number 1 person under Lin Yi's side. There was no doubt about this. Others might not be able to see this, but these 3 people must have seen it very clearly. Lin Yi was also very curious about this. After all, these 3 people had extraordinary talent and potential. In the future, when they grow up, they would all be strong subordinates. Among these 3 people, who was stronger and who was weaker would decide who would be the most reliable right hand of Lin Yi in the future. As soon as Li Jingming joined Lin Yi's side, the news of Qiao Hongkai and Xiao Ran's challenge spread like wildfire. Naturally, this matter became the focus of the Welcome Pavilion recently. Such a lively matter. Naturally, it could not escape Murongzhen's eyes and ears. After knowing about this, Murongzhen immediately went to find Meng Tong in a rage. What is it? Meng Tong weakly let Murongzhen into the cave. His face was frighteningly pale, and he looked miserable as if he was beyond cure. Previously, when Lin Yi left behind an injury, although he had used the grade 4 recover pill to keep him alive, because the medicinal power of the grade 4 recover pill clashed with the remaining meridian heart-shattering pill in his body, his injury had not fully healed until now. Moreover, he had to endure the inhumane heart-shattering pain every day from midnight to noon. Like everyone else, he had always thought that Li Jingming was just a weakling at Heaven's stage full cycle, so he had never taken him seriously. However, Li Jingming was actually able to defeat Qiao Hongkai. After fighting Qiao Hongkai 3 times, he was well aware of how strong Qiao Hongkai was. Strictly speaking, even if he took the meridian heart-shattering pill and was reborn, it would not be easy for him to defeat Qiao Hongkai, who was in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. The fact that Li Jingming could defeat Qiao Hongkai meant that he had successfully built his foundation and was a top-notch existence among experts of the same level. This person was supposed to be a powerful chess piece that we used to deal with Lin Yi. I thought that after Meng Jueguang died, you would at least try to win him over. I didn't expect you to ignore him and directly let him join Lin Yi. Murongzhen said resentfully. Logically, after learning of Meng Jueguang's death, Meng Tong, as the number 1 person under Meng Jueguang, should have immediately stood up and tried to take over Meng Jueguang's subordinates. However, Meng Tong did not do so. Firstly, he was busy recuperating in seclusion, so it was not convenient for him to come out and meet people. Secondly, he looked down on these trash who had not even built their foundation, so he was too lazy to waste his energy. However, he did not expect that Li Jingming, who had hidden such a powerful strength, would appear under him. Chapter 3968. If that's the case, then I've really miscalculated. Meng Tong was rather annoyed. If it was in the past, he might still be stubborn. However, his temperament had changed. Although he did not look like a normal person, he was much more tolerant than before. However, Murongjin suddenly said, actually, in my opinion, Li Jingming's defection to Lin Yi might not be a foregone conclusion. What do you mean? Meng Tong could not help but ask in confusion. I've already said that as soon as Li Jingming defected, he was immediately challenged by Qiao Hongkai. That was supposed to be a show of strength, but he won instead. Guess how Qiao Hongkai feels now? Murongjin speculated. Moreover, I've also heard that after Qiao Hongkai was defeated by Li Jingming, Xiao Ran challenged him again. I don't think I need to explain what's going on, right? Are you saying that Li Jingming has been pushed aside by Lin Yi's subordinates? Meng Tong's eyes lit up. It was not impossible. If Meng Tong was in Xiao Hongcai's and Xiao Ran's position, he might have done the same thing to strengthen his position. Otherwise, he would not have suppressed Li Jingming in front of Meng Jueguang. That's right. This is our chance. We can try to change Li Jingming's allegiance. Murongjin's eyes lit up. Sure, I'm fine with it. Meng Tong glanced at Murongjin and said, this should be your specialty. I don't think I have to do it myself. Apart from a few unusual creatures, Murongjin's honey trap was very effective most of the time in the welcome pavilion where women were absent all year round. It's not a problem for me to do it. However, since Li Jingming has been enduring for so long, he's not a shallow person. Can you change his allegiance? It depends on your sincerity, Murongjin said. Back at the back mountain, she clearly saw how Meng Tong treated Li Jingming. To her, Li Jingming defected to Lin Yi because he was forced by Meng Tong. If Meng Tong did not change his attitude, it would be useless no matter how hard she tried. Meng Tong's expression froze. He then said, go ahead and seduce him. I know what to do when the time comes. Very good. Then wait for my good news, Murongjin smiled, then turned around and left while twisting her waist. As long as Meng Tong was willing to apologize to Li Jingming, she believed that with her charm, it would be easy for her to seduce Li Jingming. However, Murongjin did not go to Li Jingming directly after she returned. After all, Li Jingming had just defected to Lin Yi. Even if he was being ostracized, it was just the beginning. He had not experienced it deeply enough. It was better to let him experience it for a while. Especially when he fought with Xiao Ran, the conflict between them would definitely intensify. If she, Murongjin, were to make an appearance when Li Jingming was suffering, then she would surely be able to accomplish twice the result with half the effort. Of course. Although the matter of instigating Li Jingming to defect was temporarily put aside, Murongjin did not stay idle. Her top priority now was to hook Kang Mingming. No matter what, this was the meat that had truly entered her mouth, and it was definitely profitable. Soon. Thanks to Murongjin's flattery, her efforts weren't wasted. Kang Xiaoming helped her reap some benefits that were neither too big nor too small. After getting Su Lingchong's permission, Kang Mingming took the initiative to suggest to Pavilion leader Hu Yunfeng that Murongjin should be the second senior brother in charge of Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomers. This suggestion was exactly what Hu Yunfeng wanted. Now that his senior brother had been promoted to the position of Clear Cloud Pavilion's new eldest senior brother, although the position of second senior brother didn't seem important and didn't have much actual power, it was a hard-to-come-by opportunity. In this kind of situation, it had an irreplaceable role. With Hu Yunfeng's order, Murongjin immediately became the second senior brother in charge of Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomers. Lin Yi did not care about it. In Lin Yi's eyes, these things were not worth mentioning. His top priority now was to go to Blue Cloud Pavilion to find the King of Wornout. It had been several months since he made the agreement with the King of Wornout. Although he was really troubled by various things, Lin Yi still felt sorry for the King of Wornout. Now that the threat of Meng Jueguang had been successfully solved, and there was nothing else important for the time being, it was time to fulfill the agreement with the King of Wornout. Lin Yi needed to upgrade the level of the fine steel staff as soon as possible. Otherwise, he could not use the heavenly stage magic weapon in the Foundation establishment stage. After roughly inquiring about the internal situation of the Blue Cloud Pavilion with senior brother Kubai, Lin Yi immediately set off. Alone, Lin Yi soon arrived at the territory of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. Generally speaking, the territories of the three pavilions were heavily guarded, especially places like the skyscraping pavilion. Last time, Xiao Ran just went in to find someone and was almost killed. He was lucky to meet Shanghai Laner, so he was lucky enough to survive. However, although the three great pavilions were on the same level in name, the gap between them was like heaven and earth. Compared to the heavily guarded Soaring Sky Pavilion, the Clear Cloud Pavilion's guards were so loose that it was as if they had no defenses at all. From the beginning to the end, no guards came to question Lin Yi, a stranger who had appeared out of nowhere. Of course, Lin Yi's destination was only the periphery of the foot of the mountain. If he really wanted to enter the inner periphery of the core of power, it would be a different scene. Senior brother, may I ask if Wang Lanpa lives here? Lin Yi had learned from senior brother Ku Bai before that this guy seemed to live in a wooden house at the foot of the mountain. However, after looking around, he did not find any wooden house, so he could only ask the people around him. Wang Lanpa? Who is this guy? I've never heard of him. The man frowned and immediately turned to leave. However, after a while, he suddenly turned his head and said, I've never heard of Wang Lanpa, but there is a famous poor guy here called the King of Wornout. Lin Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry. The King of Wornout was Wang Lanpa. How did this guy get along? People only remembered his nickname, but had never heard of his real name. That's him. Senior brother, can you tell me where he lives? Lin Yi asked immediately. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.